The auditorium was packed wall to wall. The overhead lights beamed down like 1,000 judgmental eyes. Every cough, every foot shuffle, every whisper echoed in Aaliyah Carter's ears like thunder. She stood stiffly at the podium, index cards clenched in her sweaty hands. Her mouth felt like sandpaper, but her eyes were fire. Across from her stood Chase Whitmore. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. Perfect reputation. He glanced at her with that easy arrogance that said, "I've already won." His hair was just tousled enough to look effortless, and his navy blue blazer looked custom-made. Aaliyah, in her thrifted blazer 2 sizes too big and worn loafers, felt the full weight of the difference between them. The moderator adjusted her mic. "You may begin with your opening statement." Aaliyah inhaled slowly. "Just breathe. Members of the board, fellow debaters, and honored guests." Her voice rang out, clear and strong, even though her heart felt like it was trying to escape her chest. This was it. Months of training. Of being overlooked, doubted, and quietly mocked. Of sitting in the back of the classroom while others got the spotlight. Of whispers in the hallway, she only got picked to make it look diverse. This was her moment to prove every single one of them wrong. But as she spoke, something unexpected happened. Chase smirked. It wasn't big. It wasn't theatrical. But it was enough. Just a twitch at the corner of his mouth that said, "Cute. But this is still my stage." It rattled her. Just for a second. A pause in her rhythm. A barely noticeable hesitation in her tone. But in debate, seconds are everything. When she finished her statement, she walked back to her chair with her chin high. She wouldn't give Chase, or the judges, or the room, any satisfaction. But inside, she was trembling. Chase stood, turned to the audience, and launched into his rebuttal like he was born to do it. He didn't even look at his notes. His voice was smooth, calculated, confident. The audience leaned in with every word. By the time he sat down, Aaliyah could practically hear the shift in the room. His side of the audience chuckled lightly. One of the judges even smiled. The other team's coach leaned over and whispered something to Chase, who nodded coolly. Aaliyah's stomach twisted. This wasn't just a competition. This was a message. Know your place. But she wasn't done yet. 2 hours earlier, in the hallway behind the auditorium, Aaliyah sat alone on a cold metal bench, flipping through her flashcards for the 1,000th time. Her fingers shook. Her hands were always steady when she was angry. But fear? That made them quake. "You good?" Marcus leaned against the wall beside her. He wore the team's school hoodie with the sleeves rolled up, and his ever-present earbuds dangling from his neck. He was the only other black student in the school's honors program, and her only real friend on the debate team. "I will be," Aaliyah said, trying to sound tougher than she felt. He gave her a long look. "You know they're gonna come for you. Hard. I know. Not just because you're good. Because you're you." Aaliyah paused, then nodded. "I've been ready for that my whole life." Marcus smiled. "Then crush him." Back in the auditorium, Aaliyah prepared for her final rebuttal. This was the last chance to shift momentum. Her eyes scanned the audience. A sea of white faces. Polished shoes, tailored blazers, gold pins. She saw the same thing at every tournament. Same people, same hierarchy, same assumptions. And then she saw her mom. In the far back, standing because there were no seats left, wearing a faded green nurse's uniform, phone raised to record, pride glowing in her eyes. Aaliyah exhaled slowly. The cards in her hands suddenly felt lighter. She stepped up to the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen, my opponent would like you to believe that eloquence equals accuracy. But if we strip away the performance, the logic doesn't hold. What he's given you is style over substance." She broke it all down. Point by point. Fact by fact. Her voice didn't waver. Her confidence grew with each sentence. She even caught one of the judges nodding. She didn't need Chase's smirk to know he'd been caught off guard. This wasn't just a rebuttal. It was a dismantling. And if we are to judge by the merit of argument, not the manner of delivery, then I believe the conclusion is clear. Silence. Then, applause. Not loud. Not thunderous. But real. Genuine. And Chase? He didn't smirk this time. He stared at her like she was someone he hadn't accounted for. Backstage after the debate, Aaliyah leaned against the wall, heart racing, replaying everything in her mind. Marcus walked up with 2 bottles of water, handing her one. "You crushed it." "I don't know," she said, shaking her head. "He was good. But you were right." She didn't respond. She wasn't sure if being right was ever enough. One of the judges walked by, paused briefly, and gave her a nod. Not the kind that said, "Nice try," but the kind that said, "Well done." Her heart jumped. Before she could fully process it, the moderator returned to the stage. And now, the results. Everything froze. Backhand index pointing right. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Before she ever stood behind a podium or faced off against Chase Whitmore, Aaliyah Carter had already been in 1,000 debates, in the kitchen, in the classroom, and sometimes just in her own mind. She grew up in East Point, a working-class suburb just outside Atlanta. The streets weren't dangerous, but they weren't easy either. Her mother, Shonda Carter, worked double shifts at a local urgent care clinic and came home smelling like latex gloves, hand sanitizer, and exhaustion. But her hugs? Always warm, always grounding. Like no matter how hard the day had been, there was still something worth fighting for. They lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the 2nd floor of a faded brick complex that rattled every time the garbage truck passed. Aaliyah's room was half closet, half study space. Posters of black leaders lined the walls, Angela Davis, Malcolm X, Toni Morrison, next to taped-up debate tournament flyers and vocabulary lists. From a young age, she was the kid who asked why, and didn't stop until she got an answer. Teachers either loved her or secretly hoped she'd be absent. But her curiosity didn't always translate into belonging. At Jefferson High, Aaliyah was one of only 7 black students in the advanced academic program. The classrooms felt like courtrooms, and she always knew the jury wasn't in her favor. Teachers praised her intelligence, but with qualifiers. "You're so articulate. You have such a strong voice. You must read a lot at home." It was never just, "You're smart." It was always a surprise. A footnote. Asterisks and disclaimers. And students? They were worse. Not cruel, exactly. Just cutting in small, invisible ways. The kind that didn't show up in disciplinary reports. "Do you even like debate? Or did Ms. Holloway just need some diversity? You're really intense, you know. Like, always serious. Are you here on scholarship or?" Aaliyah learned to smile through it. To nod. To laugh when expected. But inside, she was storing every slight like ammunition. Not for revenge, but for survival. She joined the debate team in sophomore year. At first, no one noticed. The team captain at the time, Jordan Glassman, barely made eye contact with her during practice. He called on her last, dismissed her ideas quickly, and never paired her with the better debaters. When she finally got a chance to present during a mock debate, she tore through her argument like her life depended on it. Logical. Precise. Relentless. There was a pause when she finished. A long one. Then Jordan mumbled, "Okay, decent." Decent. It was the most backhanded compliment she'd ever received, and also the first sign she was getting through. Still, she was always on the margins. In meetings, she'd sit quietly, observing patterns, studying the rhythm of successful arguments. She wasn't flashy. She didn't throw in SAT words just to sound smart. She aimed for clarity, not performance. That made her dangerous, even if no one realized it yet. Except Marcus. Marcus Johnson had been her lab partner in freshman bio and her best friend since. He was tall, sarcastic, and infuriatingly observant. He didn't just hear what you said, he heard the meaning underneath. "You know they're never gonna hand it to you, right?" he said one day after practice. "I know," she replied. "So don't wait for it. Take it." He became her unofficial coach. They'd meet at the public library 3 times a week, staying until the overhead lights flickered off. While the rest of the team skimmed argument summaries, Aaliyah was digging into primary sources, breaking down logic trees, memorizing fallacy types until they were muscle memory. She didn't just want to be good. She wanted to be undeniable. At home, her mother was less interested in competition and more focused on survival. "You sure this debate stuff gonna help you get into college?" she asked one night while stirring boxed macaroni in a dented pot. "It'll do more than that. If I win regionals, I could get a full ride." Shonda looked up, tired eyes softening. "You got dreams too big for this apartment, baby." Aaliyah smiled. "Then it's time to grow out of it." There were nights she studied with the sound of police sirens in the distance. Mornings where the hot water ran cold after 2 minutes. And weekends when her mom came home from a 14-hour shift and fell asleep on the couch before she could even eat dinner. Aaliyah never forgot those nights. Never forgot why she was doing this. It wasn't just about debate. It was about breaking out. About rewriting the story people already assumed they knew about her. Junior year, things started to shift. Ms. Holloway, the new debate coach, noticed her. A former debater herself, Holloway didn't care about polish, she cared about power. She saw what Aaliyah could do with words and began giving her bigger roles, better partners, real chances. The team didn't love it. When Aaliyah was picked for the regional team, one of the seniors quit in protest. "She's not even that experienced," he argued in a group chat Marcus later showed her. "This is some woke charity pick." It stung. But Aaliyah didn't say a word. She let her performance speak. At the first regional scrimmage, she destroyed the opposing team's case with such clean logic that one of the judges asked if she'd already started college. The room got quiet. That was the first time people looked at her not like a token, but like a threat. And threats? They don't go unnoticed for long. One evening, as she packed up her notes in the library, Marcus leaned over. "You know you're gonna face him, right?" "Who?" "Chase. Chase Whitmore. State champ 3 years running. His school always places top 3. Aaliyah had heard of him, of course. Everyone in the circuit had. His team posted highlight videos like he was a star athlete. Ivy League lineage. Private coaching. Debate camp every summer. She shrugged. "So?" Marcus grinned. "You're not impressed." "I'm just not scared." He raised an eyebrow. "Well, you should be. That boy eats rookies like snacks." Aaliyah zipped her bag, stood up, and said quietly, "Then I guess I'm not a rookie anymore." In the dim light of the bus ride home that night, Aaliyah pulled out her notebook and began writing, not facts, not citations, but thoughts. Feelings. She didn't plan on anyone reading them. But something about putting the words down made them more real. "They don't see me yet. But they will. This isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving me right." And at the bottom of the page, in bold letters, she wrote, "I am not here to belong. I'm here to win." The debate room at Jefferson High looked like any other classroom, flickering fluorescent lights, a whiteboard stained with ghostly marker residue, and mismatched chairs arranged in haphazard rows. But for Aaliyah Carter, it might as well have been a battlefield. Every Monday and Thursday after school, the team gathered here, buzzing with the controlled chaos of high school ambition. The air always carried a tense mix of Axe body spray, stale coffee, and competitive energy. Students rehearsed arguments, shuffled papers, and sparred over logic chains like their lives depended on it. Aaliyah had a seat in the far left corner, closest to the window. Not because she liked the view, just the opposite. That window gave her the ability to zone out, to mentally escape, whenever the room got too heavy with judgment. Which was often. She was the only black girl on the team. That wasn't a surprise. What was surprising was how often people pretended not to notice. No one said it out loud. No one had to. The microaggressions did the talking. Interesting angle, one teammate would say when she presented an argument, voice tinged with doubt. That's a passionate perspective, another might add, as if her passion made her less rational. Once, after she outperformed a senior during a practice match, someone muttered under their breath, "She must have memorized someone else's script." Ms. Holloway shut it down immediately, but the damage had been done. Aaliyah had learned long ago that being good wasn't enough. You had to be twice as good. And even then, they'd still question where you got it from. Despite the tension, she kept coming. Kept refining her skills. Kept reading when others scrolled on their phones. Kept showing up early and staying late. Not to impress anyone. But because she had something to prove to herself. And to Marcus. He never missed a practice, even when he wasn't scheduled to speak. He sat in the back, hoodie up, always watching. Always backing her up. One Thursday afternoon, after an especially tense practice where Aaliyah had dismantled a poorly structured argument from a senior named Drew, the room went silent. Not in awe, just discomfort. Drew had messed up, and Aaliyah had made it obvious. Ms. Holloway clapped once. That was a solid cross-examination, Aaliyah. You showed control and depth. Yeah, maybe too much, Drew muttered. A few students snickered. One girl whispered something behind her hand. Aaliyah bit her tongue. She felt her chest tighten. The comment wasn't just about debate. It was about her place. Her role. Stay quiet. Stay grateful. Don't outshine them. After practice, Marcus caught up with her by the lockers. Want to hit Java House? He asked. She shook her head. Not tonight. He studied her face. They can't handle that you're better. It's not about being better, she said, slamming her locker shut. It's about me not being them. That night, she sat at her desk in her bedroom, staring at her laptop screen. She had a regional qualifier coming up, and she was expected to partner with Drew. Great, she thought. Of all people. She opened a blank document. The topic was, should governments regulate social media platforms for misinformation? Her fingers hovered above the keyboard. They don't respect me. They don't trust me. So I'll give them no choice. She started typing. First came the argument outline. Then came the evidence. Then came the rebuttal strategies, anticipating every point Drew might fumble. She wrote until midnight, then printed out 2 clean copies, one for herself, one for Drew. She didn't owe it to him. But she wasn't about to let someone else's mediocrity drag her down. At the next practice, Drew scanned the notes she handed him and blinked. You wrote all this? He asked. She didn't answer. He read through the first page, then mumbled, damn. This is solid. No apology. No thank you. Just mild surprise that she could do it. That was the game. They'd use your work. They'd take your ideas. But they'd never admit where it came from. 2 weeks later, they walked into the regional qualifier, held at an upscale charter school with polished floors and glossy banners of Ivy League acceptances lining the halls. The moment Aaliyah stepped inside, she felt it, the look. She'd seen it at every tournament. White coaches scanning her up and down. Judges raising their brows. Other students whispering. That quiet suspicion. That, "Are you lost?" energy. She walked taller. In round 1, Drew fumbled his opening argument. Misquoted a source. Aaliyah took over in the rebuttal, salvaging their credibility with a smooth correction. The judge looked from Drew to her, then back again. After the match, he muttered, "You saved us back there." "No," she replied. "I saved myself. You just happened to be standing next to me." He didn't speak to her the rest of the day. They made it to semifinals. Ms. Holloway was thrilled. "This is it," she told the team, pointing at the bracket. "You win this, and you're heading to the state finals." The opposing team? Westfield Prep. A private school from the north side of Atlanta. Polished, pristine, and undefeated. Their star speaker? Chase Whitmore. When his name was announced, Aaliyah didn't flinch. But Marcus did. He whispered, "You ready for him?" "I've been ready." She'd seen his clips online, flawless delivery, perfectly timed humor, surgical precision. But she also saw the cracks. Over-reliance on charm. Assumptions that judges would give him the benefit of the doubt. He'd never faced someone like her before. And she knew it. As they waited to be called into the semi-final room, Chase walked past their bench. He paused. "Jefferson High?" he asked, scanning their name tags. Drew nodded quickly. "Yeah, that's us." Chase's eyes drifted to Aaliyah. "You must be the one carrying this team." Drew laughed awkwardly. "Right?" Aaliyah narrowed her eyes. "Funny. I didn't realize sarcasm was a valid tactic." Chase smirked. "Just making conversation." "Don't worry," she said. "We'll speak on the floor." His smile didn't reach his eyes. The match that followed wasn't a bloodbath. It was a war of attrition. Chase was slick, yes. But Aaliyah was surgical. While Drew struggled to keep pace, Aaliyah tore through every flaw in Westfield's argument like she was slicing threads. By the end, even the Westfield coach was watching her, not Chase. When the judges handed over the ballots, Ms. Holloway's eyes widened. "You did it," she whispered. "You're going to state." Drew blinked. "We won." "No," Aaliyah said, walking past him. "I won." The ride home after the semifinals was quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when someone wins something big, and no one knows what to do with it. Aaliyah sat near the back of the school bus, her headphones in but no music playing. Her mind replayed every second of the debate. The tone of her voice, the flash of surprise in Chase's eyes, the way the judge leaned forward when she rebutted his third point with that crisp citation from the Pew Research Center. She didn't smile. Not because she wasn't proud, but because it wasn't over. Winning regionals had only earned her the next fight. And this time, it would be on Westfield Prep's home turf, the state championship. "I can't believe it," Drew muttered from a few seats up. He was scrolling through his phone. "We beat them. I mean, you really pulled that off." Aaliyah didn't answer. She knew better than to let people make space for her only after the victory was secured. She wasn't interested in sharing credit with someone who hadn't earned it. Ms. Holloway came down the aisle and stopped beside her. "You'll be solo for the finals," she said, lowering her voice. "They've announced individual speaker rounds for the state." "Just you?" Aaliyah nodded. "Means it's all on you. No one to cover your slip-ups. But also, no one to steal your shine." Aaliyah's eyes met hers. "I'm not scared of the spotlight," she said. "Good," Holloway replied. "Because it's already following you." Back at school, the win was met with polite applause, but little more. The student council didn't announce it over the intercom. There was no assembly, no article in the school paper, no congratulations from the principal. Just a pinched, "well done," from the vice principal in the hallway. But Aaliyah noticed something else: silence. The kind that wasn't rooted in indifference, but discomfort. Suddenly, she wasn't the background character. She was the threat. The one who'd stepped into their world and rewritten the rules. A few students stopped her at lunch. "That guy you beat, Chase? Isn't he like, national level? Yo, I heard you made a judge change their vote mid-round. That even happened before. Can you teach me how to argue like that?" She gave them short answers, careful not to let the flattery distract her. She knew how fast admiration turned to resentment. That evening, she and Marcus walked the long way home through downtown East Point. The sun was low, casting burnt orange shadows across the sidewalks. "You ready for this?" he asked. "I've been ready since the day Jordan said I wasn't a lead speaker type." Marcus grinned. "You're gonna eat them alive." She smirked. "They'll call it aggressive. They already do." They passed a mural on the side of a closed corner store, an image of a young black girl with her fist raised, surrounded by flowers and books. Aaliyah stopped. "I want to be that," she whispered. Marcus looked at her. "You already are." The week before the state championship, the tension became real. It started with a subtle change in classroom energy. Teachers stopped calling on her as often. Her locker was mysteriously jammed shut 3 times in 1 week. An anonymous Twitter account popped up, posting old pictures of her from middle school with mocking captions. One post read, "Funny how she only wins when the judges want to look woke." It wasn't just mean. It was strategic. A quiet campaign to discredit her before she even stood on the stage. Ms. Holloway reported it, of course. But nothing came of it. "You know what this is," she said one afternoon in her office, handing Aaliyah a cup of tea. "It's not new. It's not even creative. It's just loud." Aaliyah stared at the floor. "I thought winning would change the way they looked at me." Ms. Holloway shook her head gently. "No, honey. Winning just makes them look harder." Aaliyah sipped the tea. It was too bitter, but she swallowed anyway. "I'm still going," she said. "I wouldn't let you stay behind." State finals were held at the Atlanta Civic Forum, a gleaming glass building in the heart of downtown. The kind of place that had valet parking and catered luncheons. The kind of place where judges wore suits more expensive than her mom's car. When she walked in that Saturday morning, everything felt cold and bright. Perfectly arranged. Sterile. Performative. There were 20 top speakers from across the state. She was the only black girl among them. Chase was there too, of course. He stood by the coffee table, flanked by his coach and 2 other Westfield debaters. He looked up when she walked in, and this time, he didn't smirk. He just nodded. Like he'd finally registered her as real. She didn't nod back. In the prep room, she unzipped her backpack and laid out her folders. Her notes were crisp. Tabs color-coded. Citations memorized. Arguments rehearsed 100 times in the mirror, on the bus, in her sleep. Marcus texted her just before she turned her phone off. "Don't play their game. Make them play yours." Her mom had sent a photo that morning, too, her standing in front of the TV screen where she'd paused a news segment about rising youth voices in Georgia. Aaliyah's name had flashed on the bottom corner. Her mom's caption read, "No matter what happens, you already broke through." Aaliyah closed her eyes and inhaled. She wasn't walking into that stage alone. She was bringing every slight, every "you're not like the others," every "you're good for your background," every "you're intense," every "you talk too much." They thought this was a debate. But for her, This was a revolution. The morning of the state finals, Aaliyah woke up before the sun. The house was still quiet, her mom asleep in the room next door, the soft hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the kitchen. Aaliyah slipped out of bed, moving quietly so as not to wake anyone. She had everything packed, her binder, neatly arranged notes, a water bottle, and an extra pair of polished shoes. She dressed carefully, no flashy colors, no loud patterns. Just a fitted blazer and dark slacks, her natural curls pulled back into a low ponytail. It wasn't about blending in. It was about being ready. As she made her way into the kitchen, the aroma of coffee filled the air. Her mom, despite her late shift at the hospital, was already up, sitting at the table in her scrub top, sipping from a chipped mug. "You're up early, baby girl," her mom said, her voice thick with sleep. Aaliyah smiled, pulling out a chair to sit down. "I know. I couldn't sleep. Big day." Her mom raised an eyebrow, though the question was rhetorical. Aaliyah nodded. "State finals." Her mom's face softened. She placed the mug down and reached across the table, her hand gently resting on Aaliyah's. "I'm so proud of you. Win or lose, you've already done something no one thought you could." Aaliyah blinked back tears, her throat tightening. She hadn't expected this kind of moment, this kind of reassurance. She thought she'd have to prove herself to her mom, show her that her dreams were worth the sacrifice. But in that moment, her mom had already proven she believed in her. "Thanks, Mom. I'll make it count." The drive to the Atlanta Civic Forum felt longer than it actually was. The streets were busy with cars heading in all directions, but it wasn't the traffic that had Aaliyah's stomach in knots. It was the weight of what was ahead. The finals weren't just about winning. It was about sending a message. When they arrived, Aaliyah stepped out of the car, inhaling deeply. The building was even more impressive in person, sleek, modern, and imposing, with towering windows that reflected the skyline. She stood still for a moment, taking in the sight, and then walked toward the entrance. Her heart was pounding, but she refused to show fear. Inside, the lobby was bustling with people, coaches, students, parents, judges. The atmosphere was electric, but Aaliyah found herself retreating into herself, a silent observer in the midst of it all. She wasn't here to be part of the crowd. She was here to stand out. Ms. Holloway caught sight of her and came over with a wide smile. "There you are. Ready?" Aaliyah nodded, forcing a smile. "Ready as I'll ever be." "Good," Ms. Holloway said, squeezing her shoulder. "I've got my eye on you. Just do your thing." Backstage, the tension was palpable. Aaliyah sat with her back against the cold wall, scrolling through her notes one last time. She could hear other students murmuring, rehearsing their lines, walking back and forth in nervous energy. The state finals had an almost theatrical atmosphere, a performance, not just a debate. She glanced up when she heard her name called. Next up, Aaliyah Carter from Jefferson High School. The sound of her name cut through the crowd like a bell. Aaliyah stood up, smoothed the front of her blazer, and walked toward the stage. The room was large, with rows of tables where judges sat behind screens, their pens poised over paper. Aaliyah could see the other contestants sitting in the front row, their eyes on her. Some looked sympathetic. Others looked competitive. Chase Whitmore was sitting near the center, surrounded by his Westfield teammates. He didn't look nervous, but there was something in the way his jaw tightened that told her he was far from complacent. He was watching her now, not in the way he had before, when he'd sized her up with arrogance, but with an intensity that she matched. Aaliyah stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of the moment. She adjusted the mic, settled her papers in front of her, and took a deep breath. The clock on the wall began ticking. She was on. For the first time in her life, she felt completely in control. The arguments flowed naturally, a smooth, deliberate rhythm punctuated by sharp facts and well-placed examples. Every move felt calculated. Every rebuttal, a carefully timed counterpoint. She could feel the judge's eyes on her, 3 seasoned experts, their faces unreadable, their pens moving furiously as she laid out her arguments. But it wasn't the judges she was focused on. It was the other competitors. Chase, especially. He looked rattled. His eyes darted from his notes to her, then back to his papers. She could tell he was losing his composure. She'd struck a chord. By the end of the round, Aaliyah had wiped the floor with her competition. She didn't gloat. She didn't even look at her scorecard when it was handed back. She knew she had done well. That was all that mattered. As she walked off the stage, her heart pounded in her chest, but her expression was calm. She had learned long ago that confidence wasn't about showing off, it was about owning the space without needing to prove anything to anyone. Marcus was waiting for her backstage, a grin on his face. "See? I told you. You nailed it." Aaliyah smiled, her eyes still focused on the ground. She didn't feel the excitement yet. She just felt a quiet relief. "You were amazing," he added. "You know," Chase was sweating. "I could see it. I think you rattled him." She nodded. "I hope so." The next round was fast approaching, and Aaliyah knew it would be the most important one yet. She had one final chance to show that this wasn't just a fluke. She wasn't just some girl from Jefferson High, lucky enough to stumble into the spotlight. She was the one who was going to change the game. But before the final round, there was a brief moment of peace. The room was quieter now, with fewer students milling about. Aaliyah found a corner by the window and gazed out at the city skyline, her reflection staring back at her in the glass. She thought of all the years of preparation, the quiet nights when no one believed in her, the times when she almost gave up. She thought about Marcus, her mom, her teammates. They had all believed in her, even when she couldn't see the path forward. And now, standing on the precipice of victory, she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer invisible. And she was ready to prove it. The last round arrived quickly, and it was everything Aaliyah had prepared for. She stood at the podium again, her heart calm, her mind clear. Chase was across from her, his jaw tight, his hands clenched. The final debate would be the test. There was no turning back now. Only one could claim victory. And Aaliyah Carter was determined to be the one. The final round was nothing like she expected. Aaliyah had pictured this moment hundreds of times. In her mind, it was always dramatic. Her closing argument would be a soaring speech, powerful enough to leave the judges stunned, to make the audience rise in a standing ovation. She imagined herself walking off the stage, confident, victorious. But reality wasn't so theatrical. Reality was more subdued, intense, sharp, and full of the quiet weight of decisions being made. She walked back to the stage with her head high, standing tall, trying not to look at the seats where the other debaters were sitting. She couldn't afford to be distracted. It was all on her now. As she approached the podium, she saw Chase sitting at the judges' table, leaning forward with his hands clasped. His gaze locked with hers for a moment, and she could see the frustration in his eyes. He had never anticipated this fight, this level of competition from someone like her. He thought he had it in the bag. She smiled internally. That was his first mistake. The judge cleared his throat, signaling the start of the round. The topic for this round, the role of social media in modern democracy. Each debater will have 6 minutes for opening statements, followed by a 3-minute rebuttal. The timer will start when you begin. Aaliyah looked down at her notes one last time, scanning the key points she needed to make. She knew this topic inside and out, she had researched the nuances of online activism, the dangers of misinformation, and the impact social media had on voter turnout. She could argue both sides if she had to. But she wasn't here to compromise. She was here to dominate. When the timer started, Aaliyah was already in motion. She launched into her opening statement without hesitation, her voice calm, measured, and authoritative. Every word had purpose, every phrase calculated. She knew how to pace herself, how to make a point and let it linger just long enough for it to sink in. The power of social media, Aaliyah began, is undeniable. It shapes opinions, forms movements, and influences elections. But it has become a double-edged sword. While it connects us, it also divides us. The very algorithms that bring us together also amplify the voices of those who spread misinformation. She glanced toward the judges, making sure they were with her. They were, nodding, jotting down notes. Let's take the 2016 U.S. election as an example. The use of fake news on platforms like Facebook and Twitter played a role in swaying public opinion. Research shows that people are more likely to believe information that confirms their biases, regardless of its truthfulness. This is a danger to democracy, one that we cannot ignore. Her words hung in the air. She could see some of the audience members leaning forward, catching her rhythm. On the flip side, she continued, social media has also been a tool for marginalized communities. Movements like #Black Lives Matter and #MeToo gained momentum largely because of social media platforms. These movements wouldn't have reached the same level of visibility without the digital world. Social media has the power to amplify the voices of those often silenced by traditional media. She paused, letting the point resonate. But now came the real test, how well she could handle the rebuttal. Chase was next. He stood up with the practiced poise of a seasoned debater. His suit was perfect, tailored, pressed, immaculate. He didn't even glance at his notes. He didn't need to. The idea that social media is inherently dangerous is flawed, Chase said, his voice cool and confident. Yes, there are bad actors who spread misinformation. But that doesn't mean we should throw out the entire system. Social media is not the problem, people are. It's up to us, the users, to regulate ourselves. Aaliyah smirked slightly, knowing where he was headed with this. Social media has provided unprecedented access to information, he continued. It has connected people across the world in ways we couldn't have imagined 20 years ago. The rise of platforms like Twitter and Instagram has empowered individuals, given them a platform to speak their truth and share their stories. The issue isn't the platform, it's the users who misuse it. Aaliyah remained calm, nodding slightly as she listened to his points. She had anticipated this argument. It was the classic defense of free speech and personal responsibility. It sounded nice, but it lacked nuance. The timer buzzed, signaling the end of his 6 minutes. Her rebuttal was about to begin. Aaliyah took a deep breath. She'd been preparing for this moment for weeks. Chase was good, there was no denying that. But he was predictable. He was playing the same card he always played, the "let people speak freely" argument. It worked in some debates, but not today. Not with her. Her rebuttal would cut through his argument like a scalpel. Chase, I agree with one thing, social media is a tool, she began. But tools are only as useful as the way they're wielded. And right now, they're being wielded irresponsibly. She walked around the stage as she spoke, making sure her words hit each judge directly. Take the rise of misinformation in the last 5 years. We're not talking about minor mistakes here. We're talking about campaigns that have deliberately misled voters, targeted minority communities with hate speech, and created divisions where none should exist. The fact that you believe people should regulate themselves is exactly the problem. We've seen what happens when people are left unchecked. She could hear the slight shift in the room, the subtle murmur of agreement from the audience. She had their attention. But here's where Chase's argument falls apart. Social media isn't just a place for individuals to have conversations. It's a system designed to keep us scrolling, to keep us addicted, to keep us hooked on emotional content. Social media companies are profiting from our outrage. They are not neutral, they are complicit in the manipulation of information. They have a responsibility to the public. Aaliyah let that sink in. We can't trust a system that benefits from division. We need regulation. We need transparency. And we need accountability. The timer went off, signaling the end of her rebuttal. She walked back to her seat, her heart still pounding in her chest. She had said everything she needed to say. Now it was out of her hands. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. The judges whispered among themselves, their pens still moving over their notes. The audience was eerily quiet. Even the other debaters were holding their breath. Chase sat across from her, his expression unreadable. And then it happened. The head judge stood, tapping his pen on the table for attention. Aaliyah Carter, Jefferson High School, he said, his voice ringing through the silence. The winner of the 2025 State Debate Championship. The words hit Aaliyah like a tidal wave. For a second, she couldn't breathe. She had done it. She had won. Aaliyah stood, her legs a little shaky, but her smile wide and proud. She shook hands with the judges, accepting her victory with grace, though inside, she was bursting. As the applause filled the room, she caught sight of Chase across the stage. For a split second, their eyes locked, and this time, there was no doubt in his gaze. She had beaten him fair and square. And there was nothing he could do to take it back. The sound of applause was deafening, but it felt distant, like Aaliyah was hearing it from underwater. She walked off the stage, her heart still racing, the taste of victory hanging in her throat like a sweet but unfamiliar fruit. She had done it. She had actually won. But as she moved through the crowd, the cheers fading behind her, a strange weight settled over her shoulders. It wasn't the exhaustion from the debate, nor was it the exhilaration of winning. It was something else, something she hadn't anticipated, the uncertainty of what came next. She had always known what she wanted, victory, recognition, to prove herself. But now that it was over, she didn't feel quite as triumphant as she had imagined. "Hey, you did it." Marcus's voice cut through her thoughts, pulling her back to reality. He appeared beside her, his grin wide, his arms open for a hug. Aaliyah chuckled, stepping into the embrace. "I can't believe it," she admitted, her voice shaky. "I really did it." "I told you you would," he said, pulling back and grinning even wider. "You were unstoppable. Everyone saw it." Aaliyah looked around, spotting her teammates cheering in the distance. Her coach, Ms. Holloway, was clapping, her eyes gleaming with pride. They were all proud of her, and she could feel their eyes on her. But somehow, the attention made her feel more exposed than ever. It wasn't just because of the win. It was because she knew the path to this moment hadn't been easy. She was the only black girl in a room full of people who looked nothing like her. And now, she had to figure out what that victory meant. The press conference immediately after the debate was something Aaliyah had been dreading. It wasn't that she didn't want to talk about her win, it was just that the attention was overwhelming. She wasn't used to the spotlight. She had always been the quiet one, the one in the background who did the work without asking for praise. But now, people were asking questions. They wanted to know how she felt, what it was like to be the first black girl to win the state championship, how it felt to crush the favorite. They asked if she thought her victory was a message to others in the debate community. They asked how she had prepared, how long she had worked for this moment. The questions kept coming. Aaliyah felt like she was suffocating under the weight of their expectations. "Do you feel like you've opened doors for other black students?" one reporter asked. Aaliyah blinked, the question hitting her in the gut. It wasn't something she had considered. She wasn't here to be a trailblazer, to carry the weight of an entire community on her shoulders. She was here to win. But now, everyone was looking at her, expecting her to answer for more than just herself. I don't know," Aaliyah stammered, trying to find the right words. "I didn't win this for anyone else. I won it for me. For all the hard work I've put in." The reporter nodded, but there was something in his expression that made her feel like he didn't really understand. He was looking for a story, a headline. He didn't see the struggle. He didn't see how hard it had been for her just to be in this room, just to stand in front of them without apologizing for taking up space. After the press conference, Aaliyah felt a wave of exhaustion crash over her. The excitement from her win had faded, and now she was just tired. Physically and mentally drained. "I'm not going to lie," she said to Marcus as they walked back to the car. "That was way harder than I thought it would be." Marcus looked at her with a knowing expression. "Yeah, it's a lot. But you've got this. You earned it." "I know," she said, her voice soft. "I know I earned it. But sometimes, I feel like I'm carrying more than just my own weight. Like everyone's expectations are on me now." Marcus didn't say anything for a moment. Then he put his arm around her shoulders, pulling her in. "You don't have to carry it alone. You've got your team, your mom, and me. We're all here for you, no matter what." She smiled at him weakly. "I know, I don't want to disappoint anyone. Not after all of this." "Listen," Marcus said, his tone firm. "You've already proven yourself. You don't owe anyone anything. You did this for yourself, not for them. And that's what matters." Aaliyah sighed, leaning against him for a moment. It was true. She had worked for this moment, had fought for it every step of the way. But the pressure of being seen as a symbol, of carrying the weight of representation on her shoulders, was heavier than she had ever imagined. The drive home felt long and silent. Aaliyah kept her eyes on the passing streets, the city lights reflecting in the windows as she processed everything that had happened. Her mom had been at work during the finals, but she was waiting for her when Aaliyah got home, her scrubs replaced by a comfortable hoodie. "You did it," her mom said, pulling her into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, baby." "Thanks, Mom," Aaliyah said, her voice thick with emotion. Her mom stepped back, studying her face. "You don't look like you're celebrating. What's going on?" Aaliyah hesitated before speaking. "I don't know. It's just, a lot, you know. I thought I'd feel more excited, but it's like everything's hitting me all at once." Her mom nodded slowly, understanding. "You're carrying a lot right now. But remember, this moment is yours. You earned it. Don't let anyone make you feel like you owe them something." "I know," Aaliyah said, swallowing hard. "It's just hard to feel like I'm allowed to enjoy it. Like everyone's waiting for me to be something I don't know how to be yet." Her mom took her hands, squeezing them tightly. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just take it one step at a time. And when you're ready, you'll share your story the way you want to. Not the way they expect it." Aaliyah's throat tightened as she nodded. She had spent so long fighting to be seen, to prove her worth. But now that she had achieved it, she realized that the most important thing was to remain true to herself. It wasn't about being a symbol. It was about being Aaliyah Carter. The girl who loved debate, who fought for every moment, and who wasn't afraid to take up space, even when it felt like the world was trying to make her shrink. As she lay in bed that night, the weight of the day still heavy on her chest, Aaliyah finally let herself smile. It was a small, quiet smile, but it was real. She had done it. She had made history. And this was only the beginning. The next few days after the championship were a blur. Aaliyah was no longer just a member of the debate team, she was a story, a symbol, a name everyone recognized. From local news interviews to social media shoutouts, her victory was spreading like wildfire. At school, the atmosphere was different, everyone seemed to be looking at her, as if she were something more than just the girl who had competed. The hallway chatter had shifted. No longer were people just talking about the typical high school drama, now, Aaliyah was the topic of every conversation. She could hear her name whispered as she walked between classes, the admiration in the voices both flattering and unnerving. She'd never been one to seek the spotlight. But now that it was on her, it felt like a weight, one that was beginning to feel heavier by the day. "Aaliyah. Over here." She turned to see a group of students gathered near her locker, holding their phones out. They were taking pictures, grinning like they had just spotted a celebrity. Aaliyah smiled awkwardly, unsure of how to react. She wasn't used to this level of attention. "Hey, guys," she said, stepping forward. "What's up? We saw you on the news," one girl gushed. "You were amazing. You totally destroyed that guy. Are you, like, the best debater ever?" Aaliyah chuckled, though the question stung a little. It wasn't that she didn't appreciate the compliment, but it was clear that her victory was no longer just about the debate. It was becoming something else, a symbol, a statement, a story that people wanted to tell. "I mean," she said, trying to brush it off, "I just did my best." "You're a hero," another student chimed in. "You showed them all." The words echoed in her mind long after she walked away. "You showed them all." It was a phrase that felt too loaded. It wasn't about showing anyone up, it was about proving to herself that she could do it. But now, it felt like the victory was being stripped of its personal meaning and repurposed for a larger narrative. That evening, Aaliyah sat at the dinner table with her mom, trying to relax after a long day. Her mom, as always, was curious about the details of her day, how she felt, who she had talked to, what the conversations were like. "How was school?" her mom asked, passing her a plate of mashed potatoes. "It was fine," Aaliyah replied, not really focusing on the food in front of her. "Everyone's been different. A lot of people are congratulating me. Some are even calling me a hero now." She said the word with a touch of sarcasm, though it stung more than she had expected. Her mom raised an eyebrow, clearly catching the shift in Aaliyah's tone. "A hero, huh?" "I don't know," Aaliyah said, shaking her head. "It feels weird. Like, they don't even care about the debate part. They just care about the fact that I don't know, the first black girl to win the championship." Her mom's face softened, and she put her fork down. "I see. And how does that make you feel?" Aaliyah's stomach twisted. She hadn't realized until that moment just how much the weight of representation was bothering her. "I mean, it's cool and all, but it's like I'm not even me anymore. I'm just this thing they want to use for their own purposes." Her mom nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. People can put a lot of weight on someone when they don't really know them. They see what they want to see. "I just wanted to win for me," Aaliyah continued, frustration creeping into her voice. "I wanted to prove that I was good enough. But now it feels like my whole story is just about my race." "Baby, that's the world we live in," her mom said gently. "People see things through the lens of what they understand or what they're used to. And when you break a barrier, especially one that has to do with race, it's hard for them to separate the two. But don't let their narrative overshadow yours. You did something incredible because of who you are, not because of what you represent to them." Aaliyah was silent for a long moment, absorbing her mom's words. It was comforting, but also complicated. It was hard not to feel like her identity had been hijacked by a broader story she didn't quite agree with. "I get it," she said eventually. "It just feels like no one really sees me anymore. Not the way I am. They see a version of me that's easier for them to understand." Her mom smiled softly, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "But you know who you are, Aaliyah. And that's what matters. The world may try to box you into their categories, but you're not confined to that. You're so much more than that win, more than what they expect from you." Aaliyah nodded, feeling a bit lighter. "I'll try to remember that." The next day, Aaliyah found herself alone in the debate room after school. She had asked Ms. Holloway for some extra practice time, needing a break from the chaos of the hallways. She wasn't quite sure how to process everything, but being in the familiar space of the debate room gave her some comfort. "Hey, Aaliyah," came a voice from the doorway. She turned to see Chase standing in the frame, his posture stiff, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Aaliyah wasn't sure what to say. Was he here to gloat? To congratulate her? "Hey," she said cautiously, raising an eyebrow. "What's up?" "I wanted to talk," he said, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. "About the competition." Aaliyah frowned, unsure of what to expect. "Okay. What about it?" I just wanted to say," he hesitated, then took a deep breath, "that you deserved to win. I was cocky, and I didn't expect you to be as good as you were. You really caught me off guard." Aaliyah blinked in surprise. Chase had always been arrogant, always so sure of himself. To hear him admit that she had outperformed him was almost disorienting. "I didn't expect that either," she replied, smiling slightly. "But you were good too. I've always known you were one of the best. This wasn't about us. It was just about proving to myself that I could do it." Chase nodded, then met her gaze. "Yeah. I think I get that. And I know this sounds weird, but I'm kind of glad you won." Aaliyah's eyebrows shot up. "You're glad?" "Yeah. You shook things up, Aaliyah. I think maybe it's time people realize that there's more than one way to be the best. And you proved that." She smiled, feeling a sense of respect grow between them. "Thanks, Chase." He shrugged, looking awkward for a moment before heading toward the door. "I guess I'll see you around." Aaliyah watched him leave, her mind spinning. She had won, not just the debate, but a sense of respect. Maybe this was the start of something more. Maybe the world would start seeing her for who she really was. It wasn't just about breaking barriers. It was about defining her own story. And she was just getting started. Aaliyah had learned something important about herself after the championship. Victory didn't always feel like she expected. At first, the pressure had been overwhelming, but now, it seemed like the world was watching, waiting for her to fall. The spotlight that had once felt like a prize now felt like a relentless spotlight on her every move. She had grown used to competing, to standing on the stage and facing the pressure of the debate, at least that was the part she understood. What she hadn't anticipated was how much the aftermath would affect her. Everyone expected her to be the symbol of change, the representative of something bigger than just herself. But the truth was, no one truly saw the battle that she fought every day, the quiet struggle of being the only black girl in a space where people expected her to be perfect. She hadn't signed up for that. Yet, somehow, she was carrying the weight of expectations on her shoulders, the silent pressure to be both great and representative of an entire community at once. And she didn't know how to handle it. It was a Friday afternoon, and Aaliyah was preparing for another competition. She'd been practicing with the team for weeks, perfecting her arguments, honing her techniques. But as she sat in the library, going over her notes one last time, her thoughts kept drifting to everything except the next debate. Her phone buzzed on the table, pulling her from her thoughts. It was a text from Marcus. "Hey, I know you're probably stressed, but you've got this. You've been killing it in practice. We're all so proud of you. Don't forget to breathe." Aaliyah smiled softly at the message. Marcus always knew how to calm her down. He was the first person who reminded her to take a step back, to breathe, to remember who she was before the weight of the world caught up to her. The truth was, she wasn't sure how much longer she could do this. The constant attention, the expectation that she would always win, it was starting to wear her down. She had fought so hard to get here, but now, it felt like there was always a new obstacle in the way. Her identity, her worth, everything seemed to be under constant scrutiny. "Are you ready?" a voice called from behind her. Aaliyah looked up to see Ms. Holloway standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, watching her with a calm intensity. I think so," Aaliyah said, trying to keep her voice steady. She had never been the type to show vulnerability, but there was something about this moment that made her feel exposed. "You've been quiet," Ms. Holloway said, walking toward her. "Everything okay?" Aaliyah hesitated, then nodded. "I'm just a little tired. I think I've been putting too much pressure on myself. I want to be good enough for everyone, but it's hard when I'm constantly feeling like I'm not allowed to mess up." Ms. Holloway sighed, sitting down across from her. "Aaliyah, you have every right to feel how you're feeling. You're juggling a lot. But you can't lose sight of why you're doing this. Not for anyone else, just for yourself. You don't need to be perfect, you just need to be true to who you are." Aaliyah bit her lip, staring at the table. "I know. But it feels like every time I succeed, it's like people just want more. They don't see me for me. They only see the image they've created." "That's because it's easier to label people than to understand them," Miss Holloway said, her voice soft but firm. "But you are not defined by what they see. You're defined by who you are, what you've accomplished. Don't let anyone take that from you. Not the reporters, not the team, not even the people who admire you. You don't owe anyone anything." Aaliyah looked up at her coach, feeling a small sense of relief wash over her. "I didn't expect it to be this hard." Ms. Holloway smiled gently. "No one does. But you're stronger than you think. And when you feel like the weight is too much, remember you're not alone. You have people who believe in you." Aaliyah let out a breath, standing up and gathering her papers. "I think I just need to focus. I can't control what people think about me, but I can control how I show up." "Exactly," Miss Holloway said, her eyes full of approval. "And no matter what happens next, you've already proven yourself. That's something no one can take away." Aaliyah nodded, a renewed sense of clarity settling in. "Thanks, Miss Holloway. I needed to hear that." The next day, the atmosphere at the competition was charged with anticipation. The debate was a regional one, and the stakes felt even higher. Aaliyah had been preparing for weeks, but now that she was here, standing in front of the judges and the audience, she felt the familiar rush of nerves. Her heart pounded in her chest, the echoes of her past debates flashing through her mind. She had proven herself before, but now, it felt like the pressure was multiplied. It wasn't just about winning for herself, it was about making sure that everyone who had supported her knew that they hadn't been wrong to believe in her. She glanced at her opponent, another favorite, a confident and polished debater named Ben, who had won several regional titles. He was already surrounded by his teammates, whispering strategies. His reputation was solid. He was the one everyone had expected to win. But Aaliyah wasn't intimidated. She knew how this game worked. She had studied the material inside and out, and she was ready. The debate began, and Aaliyah's words flowed with clarity and precision. She could feel the energy in the room shift as she made her opening statements, presenting her arguments with confidence. Ben tried to interrupt, but Aaliyah was quick to shut him down, seamlessly navigating the points he had raised and countering them with well-researched evidence. It wasn't just the content of her arguments that stood out, it was her delivery, her calmness, and the way she carried herself. She had learned to trust herself, to stand firm even when the weight of the world felt like it was pressing down on her. As the debate neared its climax, the judges' expressions were unreadable, but Aaliyah could tell they were impressed. Ben seemed rattled, his usual smoothness faltering as she pushed back against every point he made. When the final buzzer sounded, Aaliyah stood tall, waiting for the results. The room fell into a tense silence as the judges deliberated. Finally, they announced the winner. Aaliyah Carter, from Willowbrook High School. Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. She had done it again. She had proved herself, not just to everyone else, but to herself. As she walked off the stage, her teammates swarmed her, congratulating her, but Aaliyah couldn't help but feel a surge of pride mixed with relief. For a moment, the weight of expectation seemed to lift. She wasn't just winning debates. She was finding herself. That night, as Aaliyah lay in bed, the day's events replayed in her mind. The victory, the applause, the feeling of standing on top of the world. But it wasn't just the win that stayed with her, it was the quiet realization that she could handle the weight. She could carry this burden, not because she had to, but because she chose to. And maybe that was the most important victory of all. Aaliyah woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing on her nightstand. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across her room, but she couldn't help feeling the weight of the day ahead. Despite the overwhelming rush of success and admiration, there was still something gnawing at her. She had won the regional competition, but a new challenge loomed on the horizon, the national championships. Everyone was looking to her, waiting for her to lead them there. The pressure had started to feel like a constant hum in the background of her life. She was the only black girl in the debate team, and now, she was the girl everyone expected to carry the team to national glory. Aaliyah didn't want to be the face of change or an emblem of hope for anyone but herself, but that wasn't how it worked. Her success had taken on a significance that extended beyond her own aspirations. Her phone buzzed again. It was another message from Marcus. "Morning, champ. How you feeling after yesterday's win? Everyone's talking about you. Just remember, you're already a legend. Whatever happens next, you've got this." She smiled at the text, but a part of her felt conflicted. What if she didn't have it? What if all of this was too much for her to handle? What if she let everyone down? She typed back a quick reply. "Thanks, Marcus. It's a lot to take in. I'll be okay, though." The message sent, but Aaliyah's mind lingered on the weight of Marcus's words. "Whatever happens next, you've got this." By the time school started, Aaliyah had put her feelings aside. She had learned to compartmentalize her anxieties, to wear her confidence like a shield. But when she stepped into the debate room that afternoon, she could feel the difference. The tension in the air was palpable. The team was preparing for nationals, and everyone seemed to be on edge. "Aaliyah." Ms. Holloway called as Aaliyah walked in. The coach's eyes were sharp, her expression more serious than usual. "Can we talk for a second?" Aaliyah followed her coach into a corner of the room, away from the other students. "What's up?" Ms. Holloway leaned in, lowering her voice. "I just want to remind you that you're not in this alone. I know there's a lot of pressure on you. The whole team is counting on you, but you have to remember, we win as a team. Don't carry this weight by yourself." Aaliyah nodded, grateful for the reminder. It was easy to forget that, with everyone's eyes on her, she could lean on others. "I know. I'm just worried that I'll let them down. I've been doing so well, but what if it's too much? What if I mess up?" "Aaliyah, listen to me," Ms. Holloway said, her voice calm but firm. "You've already done something most people could never dream of. You've earned the respect of your teammates, the judges, and even your competition. No matter what happens next, no one can take that from you. But, more importantly, you've already proven something to yourself. You're capable of handling whatever comes your way." Aaliyah took a deep breath, feeling a weight lift from her chest. She had been so focused on pleasing others, on living up to their expectations, that she had forgotten about herself. She didn't need to be perfect. She just needed to keep being true to who she was. "Thanks, Miss Holloway. I really needed to hear that," she said quietly. "Anytime," Miss Holloway smiled, patting her shoulder. "Now, let's get back to work. Nationals are coming fast." The next few days were a blur of practice sessions, strategy meetings, and late-night study sessions. Aaliyah threw herself into the work, determined to push aside the doubt that had crept into her mind. She had always been someone who relied on preparation. If she could anticipate every angle, every argument, then she could control the outcome. But this time, it wasn't just about the arguments. It was about something bigger, her own self-doubt. Every time she stepped into the room, she could feel the weight of her teammates' expectations. They were all looking to her to lead them to victory, to prove that their success wasn't just a fluke. And while part of her wanted to run from the pressure, another part of her was determined to rise to the occasion. This was her moment, and she wasn't going to let it slip away. But with each passing day, the tension mounted. Aaliyah could sense that some of her teammates were growing anxious. They looked to her for guidance, for reassurance, and it was starting to take a toll. She wasn't sure how to balance being the leader they needed with the pressure she felt to be perfect. One evening, after another exhausting practice session, Aaliyah found herself walking alone in the school courtyard. The sun had just set, casting a soft pink glow over the sky. She breathed deeply, trying to clear her mind. She wasn't sure why she felt so restless. Everything had been going well, and yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the edge of something big. She had always been good at controlling her emotions, but now, it felt like the weight of everything was just too much. "Aaliyah, hey." Aaliyah turned to see Chase walking toward her. His face was calm, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of concern. "You good?" he asked, stopping a few feet away. Aaliyah smiled faintly, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah. Just tired." "I get that," he said, his voice softer now. "You've been carrying a lot on your shoulders. But you don't have to do it alone, you know." Aaliyah swallowed hard, feeling the tears threatening to rise. She had been so determined to appear strong, to be the perfect leader, but the truth was, she was scared. She didn't know if she could keep up the act. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "The pressure's too much. I'm scared I'll let everyone down. What if I fail?" Chase stepped forward, offering her a reassuring smile. "You won't fail, Aaliyah. I know it's tough, but you've already proven yourself more than anyone could ask for. We're all here for you, and you don't have to carry this burden alone." Aaliyah felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. She had been so focused on everyone else's expectations that she had forgotten she wasn't in this alone. She had a team. She had friends. She had people who believed in her, not because she was perfect, but because they saw her for who she truly was. "Thanks, Chase," she said, her voice steadier now. "I needed that." He gave her a friendly nod. "Anytime. We've got your back." Aaliyah smiled, feeling lighter than she had in days. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she no longer felt like she was walking it alone. She had support. She had strength. And more than anything, she had her own resolve. She wasn't just fighting for everyone else's approval. She was fighting for herself, for her own growth, her own journey. And with that thought, she finally felt ready for whatever came next. The night before the national championships, Aaliyah sat in front of the mirror, preparing her notes for the final time. Her hands trembled slightly, but she forced herself to focus. Tomorrow was a new day, and it was the day she would prove that no matter how heavy the weight, she could carry it. She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. Whatever happened, she was ready. The day of the national championships arrived with a crisp, chilly morning. Aaliyah could feel the electricity in the air as the debate team gathered at the venue. It was a sprawling convention center, buzzing with hundreds of high school debaters from across the country. The hum of excitement and nervous chatter filled the room, but Aaliyah barely noticed. She had a singular focus now, the competition. The weight of the national championship was undeniable. This wasn't just another debate. This was the culmination of everything she had worked for, the long nights of practice, the arguments that had been honed to perfection, and the pressure she had carried since the regional victory. But this time, the stakes were higher, and the scrutiny would be even more intense. She wasn't just representing Willowbrook High anymore. She was representing herself, her identity, her journey, her belief that anything was possible. As Aaliyah walked into the main hall, she found her teammates already preparing. The room was a flurry of activity, students huddled in groups, exchanging notes, revising strategies, and trying to calm their nerves. But in the midst of it all, Aaliyah couldn't ignore the knot of tension in her stomach. She had been here before, but this was different. The announcement of the first round of debates sent a shiver down her spine. Aaliyah scanned the list of names, her eyes stopping when she saw the name she had been dreading, Ben Wallace. Ben was the reigning national champion, the one everyone had been talking about since the beginning of the season. He was known for his eloquence, his smooth delivery, and his ability to dismantle any opponent with ease. Aaliyah had faced him before, but this was different. The stakes were higher, and she was no longer just another competitor in the crowd. Now, she was the one everyone was watching. Her heart raced as she made her way to the debate hall, feeling the eyes of everyone around her. Her teammates wished her good luck, but their words felt distant. The pressure had turned into a weight that was almost suffocating. She knew they believed in her, but it didn't make the nerves any easier to manage. When the doors to the debate hall opened, the rush of voices, the rustling of papers, and the sharp clicks of pens made the space feel alive with tension. Aaliyah took a deep breath as she stepped inside. She was led to a table at the front, where Ben was already seated, his expression focused, his posture confident. Ben didn't even glance up as she took her seat across from him. He was already reviewing his notes, looking like the picture of composure. His air of superiority was palpable, but Aaliyah wasn't intimidated. She couldn't afford to be. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. The moderator called the debate to order, and Aaliyah felt a surge of adrenaline rush through her. As the topic was announced, her mind snapped into focus. This was the moment she had prepared for. She couldn't afford to hold back. The debate began, and Aaliyah dove into her arguments with the precision and clarity she had perfected over months of practice. Her words were sharp, her delivery smooth, and her points were backed by evidence that couldn't be refuted. She could see Ben start to shift in his seat, his earlier confidence cracking as he struggled to keep up with her pace. Aaliyah had always been able to think on her feet, to adapt and counter any argument thrown at her, and that skill had never been more necessary. Ben had his trademark smoothness, but Aaliyah had something else. She had the fire to fight for every point, the resolve that came from knowing she had nothing to lose. As the debate progressed, Aaliyah could feel the tide turning. She could see Ben growing increasingly frustrated as she chipped away at his arguments, turning every advantage he thought he had into a weakness. Her words were calculated, but there was something else there too, an undercurrent of passion that she hadn't fully realized until that moment. She wasn't just debating for the win. She was debating for herself, for her right to be seen as more than just a symbol of diversity or the underdog. The audience, at first quiet and reserved, was now leaning in, captivated by the way Aaliyah was holding her ground. The judge's eyes flickered between the two of them, clearly impressed by the intensity of the exchange. Ben was struggling now, his usual composure slipping as he tried to recover from Aaliyah's devastating counters. Finally, the moderator called time. The room fell silent as the judges began to deliberate. Aaliyah sat back in her chair, her heart pounding. She had given everything she had in that debate, and as much as she wanted to believe she had won, there was still that gnawing doubt in the back of her mind. Ben, on the other hand, looked unfazed, his arms folded across his chest. But Aaliyah could see the slight twitch in his jaw, the subtle sign that he knew he had been outclassed. It was a small victory for her, but it was enough. When the judges finally returned with their decision, Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. Aaliyah Carter, from Willowbrook High School, is the winner of this round. The room erupted in applause, and Aaliyah could hardly believe it. She had done it. She had beaten Ben Wallace, the national champion. She had silenced every doubt that had ever clouded her path. She had proven that she belonged here. Her teammates were already on their feet, cheering for her, but Aaliyah could hardly focus on their excitement. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart, the rush of adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She had made it past the hardest hurdle, but she knew the journey wasn't over. There were still more rounds to go, more opponents to face. But for now, she allowed herself to savor the moment. She had done the impossible. As she walked off the stage, Ben approached her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Aaliyah wondered what he was going to say. But then, he extended his hand toward her. "You were impressive," he said, his tone begrudgingly respectful. "Good luck in the next round." Aaliyah shook his hand, a sense of pride swelling in her chest. "Thanks, Ben. Same to you." It wasn't much, but it was a sign of respect, something she hadn't expected. Maybe, just maybe, things were changing. Not just for her, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated. As she rejoined her team, her coach, Miss Holloway, pulled her aside. "I knew you could do it, Aaliyah. You didn't just win this round. You took everything they threw at you and turned it into a victory. I'm so proud of you." Aaliyah smiled, her chest swelling with pride. She wasn't just winning debates anymore. She was proving to herself that no matter how tough the challenge, she could rise to it. She wasn't just the only black girl on the team. She was a force to be reckoned with. Later that evening, as Aaliyah lay in her hotel room, preparing for the next round, she allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection. She had come so far, farther than she had ever dreamed, and there was still more to accomplish. But in that moment, she realized something important. It wasn't just the trophies or the applause that mattered. It was the strength she had found within herself. That was the real victory. And as she closed her eyes, knowing the road ahead was still long, Aaliyah felt a sense of peace settle over her. She was ready for whatever came next. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The next few rounds of the national championship flew by in a whirlwind of adrenaline, focus, and strategy. Aaliyah had won her second-round debate with a convincing performance, securing her spot in the semi-finals. But as the competition neared its final stages, the tension only seemed to build. Her mind was laser-focused as she prepared for the semi-finals. The team had huddled together, discussing strategies, and her coach, Miss Holloway, had given her a few final words of encouragement. "You've already proven yourself, Aaliyah. You're here because you've earned it. Now, just trust in everything you've done to get here. Trust in your instincts. The rest will follow." Aaliyah nodded, the weight of those words anchoring her in the moment. This wasn't just about winning, it was about proving to herself that she could handle anything, that she had the strength to face whatever was ahead, no matter how tough. The semi-final room was even bigger than the previous halls, a cavernous space filled with rows of spectators, coaches, and competitors. The energy was palpable, the air thick with anticipation. Aaliyah's palms were sweating, but she forced herself to stay calm. This wasn't her first time standing in front of an audience, but the stakes had never been this high. Her opponent for the semi-final round was another heavy hitter, Mia Harrison from Lincoln High. Mia was a skilled debater, known for her strategic thinking and poise under pressure. But Aaliyah wasn't intimidated. She had faced the best, and she had already proven that she could hang with them. The debate topic was announced, and the moderator gave each team a moment to prepare. Aaliyah took a deep breath, cleared her mind, and started organizing her thoughts. Her team had given her the material she needed, but she knew it was up to her to make the arguments come to life. 5 minutes until the start, one of the judges called. Aaliyah quickly scanned her notes, double-checking her facts, but something caught her eye as she glanced around the room. Across the stage, she saw Ben Wallace standing with his coach. His eyes met hers, and for a brief moment, there was a flash of recognition. Ben wasn't just the national champion anymore, he was a part of her journey. And she had already bested him. That thought gave her the smallest bit of satisfaction. She wasn't just participating in this championship anymore, she was a contender. The debate began with the usual formalities, and Aaliyah was immediately thrust into the battle of words. Mia's arguments were well-reasoned, her voice calm and measured. Aaliyah could tell she was holding back, not wanting to give away too much too soon. But Aaliyah wasn't one to wait around. She hit Mia's opening statement with a counter-argument that was sharp and direct. The crowd murmured in approval, and for a moment, Aaliyah allowed herself a small smile. She was on fire today. Her words were flowing, her logic was sound, and she could see the doubt starting to creep into Mia's expression. Mia fought back fiercely, launching into her rebuttal with even more precision. She challenged Aaliyah's sources, calling into question the reliability of the data. Aaliyah remained calm, firing back with a well-prepared counter, effortlessly pulling in supporting evidence from different sources. But it wasn't just the facts that made her debates so powerful, it was the way she delivered them. Her voice was steady but commanding, and her confidence had reached new heights. She wasn't just speaking to the judges, she was speaking to everyone who had ever doubted her, who had ever questioned whether she could really hang with the best. As the debate moved into its final moments, Aaliyah could feel her pulse racing. She knew the judges were watching closely, but for the first time, it didn't matter. She wasn't debating for their approval anymore. She was debating for herself, and that made all the difference. Mia took her final turn to rebut, but Aaliyah could see the cracks in her argument. She had been good, better than most, but she hadn't anticipated Aaliyah's depth of knowledge and insight. With a final, well-placed statement, Aaliyah wrapped up her argument. The judges began their deliberation, but Aaliyah was already sure of one thing: she had given it everything she had. The minutes that followed felt like hours. Aaliyah sat, her legs trembling slightly, her mind replaying every word she had said in the debate. She had pushed herself harder than ever, but she knew that in this world of elite debaters, anything could happen. Finally, the moderator returned with the judge's decision. Aaliyah Carter from Willowbrook High is the winner of this round. Aaliyah froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. She couldn't believe it. She had done it again. She had won her place in the final round of the national championships. The room erupted in applause, but it was distant to her now. All she could hear was the pounding of her heart, a symphony of triumph that echoed in her ears. She had made it to the final, the one step away from securing the title. But more importantly, she had proven to herself that she was worthy of being here. Her teammates rushed to her, enveloping her in hugs and high fives. The celebration felt surreal, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest battle was still ahead. As she walked off the stage, Ms. Holloway caught her eye and gave her an encouraging nod. "You did it, Aaliyah. You earned that win." Aaliyah smiled, her face flush with exhaustion and excitement. "It's not over yet," she said, her voice low. "I still have one more round to go." Ms. Holloway smiled back. "I know. But no matter what happens, you've already proven something to yourself. You're ready for whatever comes next." Aaliyah nodded, the weight of those words settling into her chest. She was ready. She wasn't just fighting for a trophy anymore. She was fighting for her own journey, for the chance to show the world who she truly was. That evening, as Aaliyah lay on her hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, her phone buzzed with another message from Marcus. "You're one step away from it, huh? So proud of you. You've already made history, Aaliyah. Just go out there and finish it." Aaliyah smiled, a tear escaping her eye before she wiped it away. It was more than just winning now. It was about proving to everyone who had ever doubted her, to everyone who had ever questioned if she belonged, that she was more than enough. She had already won. And tomorrow, she would prove it again. The final round was upon her. Aaliyah could feel the weight of it more than ever. After weeks of intense competition, after overcoming her own doubts and fears, she was standing on the precipice of something that could change her life forever. But for now, all she could do was focus on the task at hand. The convention center was buzzing with excitement as the final round drew near. The large room was filled with dozens of spectators, parents, coaches, and fellow competitors, all eager to witness the culmination of the national championship. Aaliyah could feel the tension hanging in the air, but she wasn't fazed. She had been in situations like this before, and if there was one thing she had learned, it was how to focus when it mattered most. Aaliyah sat in a quiet corner, her team gathered around her, offering their final words of encouragement. The stakes were higher now, and the competition was fierce. Her opponent in this final round was none other than Mia Harrison, the same debater she had faced in the semifinals. Mia had fought hard, but Aaliyah could see the fatigue in her eyes. She had pushed herself to the limit just to get here, but Aaliyah knew that Mia was vulnerable now. She had been tested, and though Mia was a formidable opponent, Aaliyah wasn't about to back down. Ms. Holloway leaned over and placed a hand on Aaliyah's shoulder. "You've already shown what you're capable of," she said with a smile. "Now, just finish what you started. This is your moment." Aaliyah nodded, her breath steady as she reviewed her notes one last time. She could feel the pressure building, but in this moment, it was almost comforting. She thrived under pressure, and if there was ever a time to prove it, it was now. The moderator stepped onto the stage, his voice booming as he introduced the final round. "Ladies and gentlemen, we now enter the final debate of the national championships. On one side, we have Aaliyah Carter from Willowbrook High. And on the other side, Mia Harrison from Lincoln High. The topic for this final debate is, the role of technology in shaping the future of education." Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. The topic was broad, but it was right in her wheelhouse. She had done extensive research on the intersection of technology and education for her final prep, and she felt confident in her ability to argue effectively. As she made her way to the stage, the spotlight fell on her, and for a split second, everything around her blurred. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, and walked with purpose to her spot on the debate floor. The audience's applause filled the air, but she didn't allow it to distract her. This was her moment to shine, to prove everything she had worked for. Mia was already in position, her eyes narrowing as she locked onto Aaliyah. The competitive fire was still there, even after their grueling semi-final match. Aaliyah couldn't help but admire Mia's resilience, but this was her time now. She had come too far to let anything slip. The moderator called for the first speaker, and the debate began. Mia spoke first, laying out her arguments with precision and confidence. She argued that technology was revolutionizing education, making it more accessible, efficient, and engaging for students of all backgrounds. Her points were logical, and her delivery was smooth, but Aaliyah could see the cracks beneath her polished exterior. There was something in her tone, an underlying desperation to prove herself, that made Aaliyah more determined than ever to win this. Aaliyah was up next, and she felt the weight of the moment. She could hear her heart pounding in her ears as she stood up and began her opening statement. "Technology is not the panacea for education that many think it is," she said, her voice steady but strong. "While it's true that technology has brought many advances to the classroom, we must also acknowledge its limitations. There is a widening gap between students who have access to advanced technologies and those who do not. And even with the best tools, technology can never replace the human connection that is at the heart of education." Her words landed with a punch, and she could see the subtle shift in the audience. Mia's confident posture wavered just slightly as Aaliyah continued to make her case, detailing the inequalities in access to technology, the over-reliance on screens, and the loss of critical thinking skills in favor of convenience. Aaliyah paused, letting the weight of her argument sink in before delivering her closing statement. Education is not just about access to the best technology. It's about fostering creativity, critical thinking, and human interaction. We need to use technology as a tool, not a crutch. If we're not careful, we'll lose sight of the things that truly make education meaningful. The room fell silent as Aaliyah finished, her words hanging in the air like a challenge. She had made her point, and she had made it powerfully. She could see Mia's discomfort now, the cracks in her argument becoming more apparent. Mia had tried to convince the judges that technology could solve all the problems in education, but Aaliyah had shown that it was only part of the solution. Mia's rebuttal came quickly, but Aaliyah could tell it was more rushed than the previous arguments. She scrambled to come up with counterpoints, but they felt shallow compared to Aaliyah's well-rounded perspective. The audience, too, seemed to sense the shift in momentum. Aaliyah's team was watching with bated breath, but Aaliyah was calm. She had done the work. She had put in the hours. And now it was all coming together. As the final round came to an end, Aaliyah stood tall, knowing she had done everything she could. She had faced down her fears, her doubts, and her competitors. And now, it was all in the hands of the judges. The deliberation took what felt like an eternity. The room buzzed with anticipation as the judges huddled together, exchanging notes and opinions. Aaliyah stood with her team, her nerves once again creeping in, but she pushed them aside. This was it. No matter the outcome, she knew she had already proven something. She had fought for her place at the table, and that was worth more than any trophy. Finally, the moderator returned to the stage, and the crowd fell silent. The winner of the National Debate Championship is Aaliyah Carter from Willowbrook High. The room erupted into applause as Aaliyah stood frozen for a moment. She couldn't believe it. She had done it. She was the national champion. Her heart was racing, but a sense of peace washed over her as she made her way to the stage to accept her trophy. Her teammates surrounded her, cheering and congratulating her. Ms. Holloway was beaming with pride, and Aaliyah could feel the love and support of everyone who had been with her throughout this journey. But as she held the trophy in her hands, it wasn't the prize that mattered most. It was the realization that she had fought for her place, not just in the competition, but in a world that often tried to push her aside. She had shattered expectations, and in doing so, she had become the person she was always meant to be. This wasn't just her victory. It was a victory for anyone who had ever been told they couldn't do something because of who they were. And as Aaliyah stood there, smiling with the championship trophy in her hands, she knew that this was only the beginning. Aaliyah had always been the kind of person who preferred to stay grounded, to keep her focus on what mattered most. But as she stood there, holding the National Debate Championship trophy, she couldn't deny the magnitude of what she had just accomplished. Her journey had been about more than just winning, it was about proving that she belonged, that her voice mattered, and that the world could no longer ignore the power she carried within. The celebrations after the final round were overwhelming. Her teammates hoisted her on their shoulders, laughing and shouting in celebration. Ms. Holloway had tears in her eyes as she embraced Aaliyah, murmuring words of pride and admiration. "You did it, Aaliyah. I knew you had it in you." Aaliyah's heart swelled with gratitude. This win wasn't just hers. It belonged to her team, to her coach, to everyone who had supported her along the way. She wasn't alone in this moment. She had carried them all with her, and they had all played a part in her success. The crowd continued to cheer as Aaliyah made her way to the stage to accept the championship trophy. As she stood before the audience, holding the trophy in her hands, the gravity of the moment finally hit her. She had done what many thought was impossible. She had shattered expectations and made history. But more importantly, she had proven something to herself. She wasn't just the only black girl in the debate team. She was the champion. The weeks following the championship were a blur. Aaliyah's name was everywhere. Local news stations wanted interviews. Schools across the country reached out, eager to have her speak at assemblies. College recruiters started showing up at Willowbrook High, hoping to get a glimpse of the prodigy who had taken the national debate stage by storm. But despite all the attention, Aaliyah kept a level head. She didn't let the accolades get to her. She knew that the real work wasn't in winning the trophy, it was in what came next. Her senior year was quickly coming to a close, and with it, the next chapter of her life was waiting. The reality of her success had started to sink in, she was going to college. She was going to be a part of something bigger than herself. The opportunities before her were endless, and yet, she still couldn't quite wrap her head around it. She had worked so hard to get here, and now the future seemed both exciting and daunting all at once. One evening, Aaliyah found herself sitting on the roof of her apartment building, staring up at the stars. It was one of the few moments of peace she had allowed herself since the championship. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out to see a message from Marcus. "You've done it. I'm so proud of you. But this is just the beginning, right? She smiled, typing out a quick reply. Just the beginning. She leaned back against the cold metal of the rooftop, letting the cool night air wash over her. For the first time in a long while, Aaliyah allowed herself to think beyond the stage, beyond the debates. She thought about what she wanted for her future, what kind of person she wanted to be. The championship had been a defining moment, but it wasn't the end. She had more to offer the world than just her debating skills. She wanted to change the world, to make it a place where young people like her didn't have to fight so hard just to be heard. Back at school, the hallway chatter was filled with whispers about Aaliyah's win. It was hard to go anywhere without people congratulating her, and while it was nice to hear, part of her longed for a bit of normalcy. She had always been a quiet, focused student, and the sudden spotlight felt overwhelming. But it wasn't the attention she cared about. It was what came with it. Aaliyah had been invited to speak at a local community event, where she was to deliver a keynote address on the importance of education and how it could shape the future for people of color. She had never done anything like this before, but the invitation felt like an important opportunity, one she couldn't turn down. The night of the event arrived, and Aaliyah found herself backstage, nervously pacing. The crowd outside was large, almost as big as the one at the national competition. And the thought of speaking in front of so many people made her stomach twist. But she had done it before. She had stood in front of audiences, given her all, and come out victorious. This was just another stage, another chance to use her voice. The event organizers called her name, and Aaliyah took a deep breath before stepping out into the spotlight. She could feel the eyes of the audience on her, but she didn't let it distract her. She knew why she was here. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that education is the only thing that will change the world, she began, her voice steady. But it's one of the most powerful tools we have. It's the key to breaking down the barriers that hold us back, and it's the foundation upon which we can build a better future. Her words resonated with the audience, and she could feel the connection as she spoke. It wasn't just about debating anymore. It wasn't about trophies or championships. It was about making a difference. Aaliyah spoke passionately about the challenges faced by underrepresented communities in education, how access to quality resources could change the trajectory of young lives, and how the system needed to evolve. She used her own experience as a black girl on the debate team as a powerful example of what it meant to overcome obstacles and push for change. I've been told my whole life that I couldn't do certain things because of who I am. But I'm standing here today, not just because I proved them wrong, but because I refuse to let their limitations define me. And I want all of you to know that you can do the same. When she finished, the crowd erupted into applause. Aaliyah felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. This was her true purpose, using her voice to lift others up, to inspire the next generation to believe in themselves, even when the world told them they couldn't. After the event, Aaliyah received several messages of thanks and support, but it wasn't until she was alone, walking back to her car, that she truly understood what it all meant. Her journey wasn't just about winning debates, it was about using her platform to ignite change. The championship had been the beginning of her story, not the end. As she drove home, the city lights twinkling in the distance, she realized that the world was waiting for her. She had always known that she was capable of greatness, but now, with her future laid out before her, she felt ready to embrace whatever came next. This was just the beginning. Aaliyah woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing on the nightstand. It was early, too early for her to be up, but she couldn't ignore the message flashing across her screen. She rubbed her eyes and reached for her phone, still half asleep. Aaliyah, I need to talk to you about an opportunity. It's big. Call me when you can. Mr. Grayson. Her heart skipped a beat. Mr. Grayson was the head of the college admissions office at a prestigious Ivy League school, and his message was exactly the kind of thing she had been waiting for. But as she stared at the screen, a mix of excitement and anxiety bubbled up inside her. This could be her chance. The chance to leave Willowbrook and step into a world she had only dreamed of. She immediately jumped out of bed and got dressed, trying to push aside the nerves that were creeping in. The thought of leaving everything behind, her family, her friends, her community, was terrifying, but the reality of her dream college felt so close now. She had worked so hard, overcome so many barriers, and this could be the moment that changed everything. As she stepped outside, the early morning air was crisp. She pulled her jacket tighter around herself as she walked to the car. The sun was barely rising, and the streets were still quiet. The world felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Aaliyah arrived at the coffee shop where she had arranged to meet Mr. Grayson. He was already there, sitting at a table near the window with a cup of coffee in front of him. His expression was serious but welcoming, as though he understood how much this meeting could mean to her. "Good morning, Aaliyah. I'm glad you could make it," he said, standing as she approached. "Of course," she replied, settling into the chair across from him. She noticed the folder he had in front of him. It looked official, important. She could feel her heart racing, but she kept her composure. "I'm going to get straight to the point," Mr. Grayson said, opening the folder and pulling out a thick stack of papers. "We've been following your progress, and I must say, we're incredibly impressed with your accomplishments, especially your recent victory in the national debate competition. You've shown remarkable potential, not only in academics but also in leadership, perseverance, and your ability to break barriers." Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. Was he really saying what she thought he was saying? "We believe you're exactly the kind of student we want at our university. And we'd like to extend an offer of admission." Aaliyah blinked, processing the words. Her mind felt like it had frozen. This was it. The moment she had dreamed about for years. She had worked so hard, faced so many challenges, and now, she was being offered a spot at one of the most prestigious colleges in the country. But even in the face of this victory, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered doubts. Could she really leave everything behind? Could she thrive in such an unfamiliar environment? Could she live up to the expectations of the people who believed in her? Mr. Grayson noticed her hesitation and smiled. "I know this is a lot to process, Aaliyah. But trust me, you've earned it. You have a future here, one where you can truly make an impact." Aaliyah exhaled slowly, her heart still pounding. "This is incredible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I don't know if I'm ready for all of this. It's a huge change. I've never lived away from home." "I understand," Mr. Grayson said kindly. "Change can be overwhelming. But sometimes, stepping outside of your comfort zone is exactly what you need to grow. You've already proven to yourself that you can handle anything. This is just the next step." Aaliyah sat back in her chair, letting his words sink in. The truth was, she had always known that she was destined for something bigger. She had always known that her voice, her experiences, and her perspective were valuable. But now, with this opportunity laid out before her, the weight of the decision suddenly felt heavier than ever. She wasn't just making a decision for herself, she was making a decision that would impact her family, her friends, and her community. For a moment, she felt a wave of doubt wash over her. Could she really leave everything she knew behind? Could she succeed in a world so different from the one that had shaped her? The answer, she realized, was not about whether she could do it. It was about whether she was willing to try. She took a deep breath and met Mr. Grayson's eyes. "I'm in," she said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "I'm ready." Mr. Grayson smiled, and for the first time, Aaliyah allowed herself to feel a sense of peace. This was the next step. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't always be comfortable, but it was hers to take. Over the next few weeks, Aaliyah began the process of preparing for college. The excitement was palpable as her acceptance letters from other schools started arriving, but there was no doubt in her mind that the Ivy League school was where she belonged. She could already envision herself on campus, engaging with professors and peers who would challenge her, who would help her grow. But as much as she looked forward to the future, she couldn't ignore the bittersweet feeling that lingered. She was going to miss her family, her friends, and the community that had shaped her into the person she was today. The thought of leaving behind the people who had supported her through every trial, every triumph, was difficult to bear. One afternoon, as she sat in the park with her mother, Aaliyah couldn't hold back the tears that had been building inside her. "I'm so proud of you, Aaliyah," her mother said, her voice filled with emotion. "You've worked so hard for this. I know you're going to do amazing things." "I don't know if I'm ready to leave you," Aaliyah admitted, wiping her eyes. "Everything's changing so fast." Her mother took her hand and squeezed it gently. "Change can be scary, sweetheart. But it's a part of life. And I know you're ready for whatever comes next. You've always been strong. And you've got a whole world ahead of you." Aaliyah nodded, taking comfort in her mother's words. It was true. She had always been strong, always been resilient. And as much as she wanted to hold on to the familiar, she knew that she couldn't grow unless she embraced the unknown. The day she left Willowbrook for college was filled with mixed emotions. Her family was there, helping her pack her things into the car, offering hugs and last-minute advice. The streets she had walked every day, the school where she had proven herself, the community that had supported her, they were all in her rearview mirror as she drove away. But ahead of her lay a world full of possibility. A world where she would continue to fight for what she believed in, where she would continue to push for change, and where she would use her voice to make a difference. She was ready. Ready to step into the next chapter of her life, ready to prove to herself, and to the world, that she belonged at the table. She was more than just the only black girl on the debate team. She was a force to be reckoned with. The first few weeks at college were a whirlwind. Aaliyah couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so overwhelmed with new experiences, yet so determined. Every corner of the Ivy League campus was filled with possibility, classrooms buzzing with intense debates, libraries packed with endless rows of books, and student groups pushing for change. She felt like she was standing at the edge of a vast ocean, ready to dive in, but unsure of what the waters would bring. It was hard to adjust at first. Everything was different. The people, the pace, the expectations. It all felt like a shift too big to fully comprehend. Yet, as challenging as it was, Aaliyah felt more alive than ever. This was what she had worked for, and she knew there was no turning back. Her first few days were spent navigating the logistics, figuring out which classrooms were on opposite ends of the campus, joining clubs that sparked her passion, and meeting people from all over the world. But what stood out most to her was the weight of the history she was now a part of. The walls of the campus seemed to hum with the stories of those who had walked its halls before her, bright minds, leaders, changemakers who had shaped the world. And then, there was the reality of the classrooms themselves. Aaliyah had always excelled academically, but here, surrounded by some of the most brilliant young minds in the country, she realized just how much she had to prove. The debates in class were sharper, the assignments more challenging, and the professors were a far cry from Miss Holloway, who had always encouraged her to think outside the box. It wasn't the intellectual rigor that intimidated her, though. It was the culture. The pressure to not just succeed, but to thrive in a predominantly white, elite environment. Aaliyah found herself in many rooms where she was the only black student, and sometimes, the only woman of color. The constant reminder of her difference could be stifling. At times, she wondered if she was truly accepted, or if she was just tolerated. One evening, after a long day of lectures and club meetings, Aaliyah sat in the common room of her dorm, scrolling through her phone. She had joined a couple of student organizations dedicated to diversity and inclusion, and she was grateful for the sense of community they provided. But, as she watched a video of her debate team back home celebrating their latest victory, a pang of homesickness hit her. She missed her teammates. She missed the comfortable, familiar space of Willowbrook High, where her worth was never questioned, and where she was celebrated for her abilities, not scrutinized for her race or background. She missed Ms. Holloway's constant belief in her, the same belief that had carried her through the toughest moments of her life. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "How's college life treating you? You must be killing it already." She smiled at the message. Marcus had been her rock during high school, and although they were now miles apart, his support had never wavered. Aaliyah responded quickly. "It's a lot. I love it, but sometimes it feels like I'm always trying to prove myself. I miss the team, and I miss how easy things felt back home." Her phone pinged again, and Marcus's reply was quick. "I get that. But remember what you told me. You earned your place there. No one can take that from you. And you're already changing lives. Look at everything you've done so far. Keep pushing. You've got this." His words were a comfort, and she held on to them as she sat back in her chair. He was right. She had worked hard to get here, and she wasn't going to let the challenges of her new life deter her. But still, the weight of it all sometimes felt like too much to carry alone. The next day, Aaliyah walked into her first political science class, her head held high but her stomach in knots. The lecture hall was filled with students who seemed confident in their understanding of the material, as if they had been born into this world of academia. Aaliyah sat down at a desk near the front, determined to focus and not let the intimidating atmosphere throw her off. The professor, Dr. Foster, was a well-respected figure in political science, an expert in international relations and social justice. He was known for being tough but fair, challenging his students to think critically and push the boundaries of their own understanding. "Good morning, class," Dr. Foster began. "Today, we're going to talk about the intersection of politics and identity. I want you to think about the role that race, gender, and socioeconomic status play in shaping political landscapes. And I want you to be honest with yourselves. This is going to get uncomfortable." Aaliyah's heart raced as she looked around the room. She knew that this would be a conversation where her voice would matter, but she also knew that speaking up in a room full of students who had likely never experienced the things she had would put her in a vulnerable position. Still, she took a deep breath and raised her hand. "Yes." Dr. Foster called on her, his eyes focused. Aaliyah's voice was steady as she spoke. "It's hard to talk about politics and identity without addressing the fact that systems of power are often built to exclude people like me. I'm the only black person in most of my classes, and it's not just a coincidence. It's a reflection of a larger issue within society. When we talk about political power, we can't ignore the fact that for people of color, that power is often out of reach." There was a pause in the room. Aaliyah felt every pair of eyes on her, some intrigued, others skeptical. But she didn't let that stop her. "This isn't just theory," she continued. "It's my reality. It's the reality of so many people I know. The fight for equality is never just theoretical, it's deeply personal." The room was silent for a moment before Dr. Foster nodded, clearly impressed by her courage. "That's a powerful point, Aaliyah," he said. "And it's one we'll be addressing throughout the semester. Thank you for bringing that perspective to the discussion." Aaliyah sat back in her seat, feeling a sense of pride well up inside her. She had done it. She had spoken her truth, and she had done so unapologetically. In that moment, she felt like she was beginning to carve out a space for herself in this new world. As the weeks passed, Aaliyah found herself growing more confident. She joined a student-led organization that focused on amplifying the voices of underrepresented groups on campus. She found herself debating not just in classrooms, but in student government meetings, discussions about diversity, and even social media platforms where students gathered to share ideas and push for change. Each day felt like a new opportunity to challenge herself, to be a voice for those who were often silenced and to advocate for the change she had always believed in. But it was never easy. The weight of being one of the few black students in her classes, in student organizations, and in positions of leadership was always present. Sometimes it was exhausting, and sometimes she just wanted to be seen as a person, not as the token voice for diversity. But each challenge only made her stronger. Aaliyah had come to college to do more than just get a degree. She had come to make a difference, and that meant she had to push past her own doubts, her own fears, and even the limitations that others might try to impose on her. The more she embraced these challenges, the more she realized that she wasn't just surviving college, she was thriving. This world wasn't as unfamiliar as it had seemed in the beginning. She belonged here, and no matter how many times the world tried to tell her otherwise, Aaliyah was determined to show them all that she could, and would, change it. Aaliyah had gotten used to the ebb and flow of campus life, the daily rhythm of studying, attending meetings, and hanging out with her new friends. Yet, no matter how much she tried to focus on the present, there was always something in the back of her mind, a feeling that she was still being tested in ways she hadn't fully anticipated. She was walking across campus one crisp morning when she heard a voice call her name. Aaliyah. She turned to find Sarah, a fellow student in one of her political science classes, waving her down. Sarah was a quiet, but passionate activist. They had exchanged a few words about the injustices faced by marginalized communities, but they hadn't gotten to know each other well. "Hey, Sarah. What's up?" Aaliyah asked, a little surprised to see her. "I just wanted to let you know that you've got a lot of eyes on you. Your speech in Dr. Foster's class, people are talking about it." Sarah paused, then added, "But, not all of it's good. Some people are really uncomfortable with what you said." Aaliyah felt her stomach tighten. She knew that her words hadn't been the easiest to hear, but she had hoped that they had sparked some critical thinking, not backlash. "Uncomfortable? In what way?" Aaliyah asked, trying to keep her tone neutral. Sarah hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Some of the more privileged students think you were too harsh. They don't like the idea that the system is rigged against people like you. They think you're accusing them of being part of the problem, and well, you are. But it's causing a bit of a stir." Aaliyah was silent for a moment, processing Sarah's words. It was frustrating, but she understood the discomfort. People didn't like being called out for their privilege, for the systems they benefited from without even realizing it. But that wasn't her problem. Her problem was that the system itself was broken. "Thanks for letting me know," Aaliyah said. "I'll deal with it." As she continued walking to her next class, her mind was racing. She knew her words had power, but she had hoped to inspire change, not to divide people. Maybe she was naive to think she could have it both ways. Maybe the truth was too uncomfortable for some to hear. But no matter what, Aaliyah wasn't going to shrink back. She would keep speaking, keep challenging people to think beyond their own narrow worldviews, no matter how uncomfortable it made them. Later that week, Aaliyah received an invitation to an exclusive dinner hosted by the university's debate society. The invitation had come as a surprise. She wasn't yet part of the team, but after her victory in the high school national competition, her name had circulated among the members. They wanted her to meet the team, hear about her experiences, and see if she'd be interested in joining. Aaliyah wasn't sure what to expect. She had always considered herself a competitor, not necessarily a team player. But something about the invitation intrigued her. If she joined, she'd get to test her skills in a new environment, challenge herself further, and maybe, just maybe, prove that she belonged among the best. The dinner took place at an upscale restaurant in the city, with polished wood tables and sparkling glassware. Aaliyah arrived early, nervously adjusting her dress before walking inside. The room was filled with students, mostly men, mostly white. They were gathered in groups, chatting animatedly about debate tactics and strategies. Aaliyah felt the familiar pang of self-doubt. She had spent the past few weeks getting used to being the only black person in many of her classes, but this was different. This was the debate society, the best of the best. And these were the students who had dominated debate tournaments, who had secured places in prestigious competitions. Would they see her as just another token competitor? Or would they take her seriously? She was still contemplating these questions when a voice broke through her thoughts. Aaliyah, right? She turned to find Ben, one of the top debaters on the team, walking toward her. Ben was tall with tousled brown hair and a smile that could melt any tension in the room. He extended his hand. Ben, he introduced himself, and Aaliyah shook it, giving him a smile in return. I've heard a lot about you. You're the girl who took down the national champion, right? He said with a wink. Aaliyah couldn't help but laugh. I did, indeed. That was a fun day. I bet. Ben said, his eyes gleaming with respect. Listen, we're really excited to have you here tonight. We've heard you've got some serious skills. A few of us have been wanting to bring you into the team for a while now. Aaliyah felt a flush of pride. I appreciate that. I've been thinking about it. I'm not sure if I'm ready for the intensity of the debate society just yet. That's what we're here for. We push each other to be better, and we challenge each other to grow. The best way to get better at this is to dive right in. And honestly, I think you'd be a great addition to our team. She hesitated. Ben's words were kind, but she knew that joining this team would be a huge commitment. It wouldn't just be about proving herself, it would be about living up to the legacy of the students who had come before her. She would be under constant scrutiny, constantly fighting to prove that she was worthy of the opportunity. I'll think about it, Aaliyah said, though a small part of her knew that she would end up joining. She couldn't ignore the fire that burned inside her, the need to push herself, to be better, to be part of something bigger. The following day, Aaliyah received a message from the team's captain, Claire. Claire was sharp, determined, and known for her competitive spirit. She had led the team to multiple championships and had an intensity that Aaliyah both admired and feared. Claire had a reputation for demanding excellence, and now, it seemed, she was eager to have Aaliyah on board. I've been hearing nothing but good things about you, Claire's message read. If you're ready to push yourself to your limits, we'd love to have you join the team. Let's meet for coffee tomorrow, talk things through. Aaliyah stared at the screen, her mind racing. Joining the debate society was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. But was she ready to face the pressure of a team that demanded nothing less than perfection? Was she ready to dive into the competitive world she had once dreamed of but never dared to fully embrace? There was only one way to find out. The next day, Aaliyah met Claire at the campus coffee shop. Claire was already sitting at a table, her laptop open in front of her. She looked up when Aaliyah approached, offering a smile that was both warm and calculating. I'm glad you came, Claire said, gesturing for Aaliyah to sit down. I've been hearing about your debate skills for weeks. You've already made an impression, even without being on the team. But we're not just looking for someone who can argue, we're looking for someone who can push boundaries. Someone who can think outside the box. Aaliyah took a deep breath. I'm interested. But I need to know if this is the right place for me. I've always been the underdog. I don't want to be just another diversity token. I want to make a real impact. Claire's eyes softened for a moment, before narrowing with determination. I understand. And I'll tell you right now, you're not a token. You're here because you've got something real. But it won't be easy. If you join us, you'll be expected to bring your A game. No excuses. Aaliyah smiled, her resolve hardening. I wouldn't want it any other way. Claire leaned forward. Then welcome to the team. The weeks flew by faster than Aaliyah could keep up with. The whirlwind of university life had intensified since she had joined the debate society. Her days were filled with intense practice sessions, endless reading, and late nights spent drafting arguments. But it wasn't just the sheer volume of work that took her by surprise, it was the level of competition. Claire, the captain, wasn't exaggerating when she said that the team pushed each other to be better. Aaliyah had quickly learned that no one on the team would cut her any slack. Every word she spoke in practice, every argument she presented, was scrutinized with an intensity that left her feeling exposed at times. But at the same time, it made her stronger. As the weeks passed, Aaliyah's confidence grew. She had always been good at debating, but being surrounded by some of the sharpest minds in the country was pushing her to elevate her game to new heights. She was getting better at thinking on her feet, anticipating counterarguments, and presenting her ideas more persuasively. But it wasn't just her skills that were evolving, it was her understanding of the world of debate. She had entered the team with the hope of challenging herself, of proving that she belonged in the competitive, high-stakes arena of national debates. But what she didn't expect was how much she would learn about the nuances of power, privilege, and perspective in those heated discussions. One evening, after a particularly intense practice session, Claire called an impromptu meeting with the team. "Aaliyah, I need to talk to you for a minute," Claire said, her voice serious. The rest of the team had already scattered, heading off to their respective projects or late-night study sessions. Aaliyah's heart skipped a beat. She had been doing her best to prove herself, but there was always that nagging doubt that maybe it wasn't enough. Maybe she was just another placeholder in the team, a diversity piece to check off a box. "Sure, Claire. What's up?" Aaliyah asked, trying to sound calm. Claire motioned for her to sit across from her at one of the empty tables in the team's practice room. "You're doing well. Really well. But there's a big competition coming up, and I think you're ready to compete. However, I need to be honest with you about something." Aaliyah's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "There's a lot of pressure on you," Claire said bluntly. "Not from the team, but from the competition. We're up against teams from other Ivy League schools, some of the best debaters in the country. And, let's be real, they won't take you seriously at first. They'll see you as the underdog, maybe even a token, if they're being honest. You have to prove them wrong, no one is going to hand you respect." Aaliyah felt a wave of frustration rise within her. It wasn't just about proving herself to the team anymore. Now, she had to prove herself to the entire debate community, a community where people had likely never given a second thought to her experience, her background, or the things that motivated her. Claire seemed to sense the tension in the air. "But that's why I want you on this team. We need someone like you, the one who's willing to challenge not just the arguments, but the whole system. You've got a unique perspective that can shake things up. Trust me, we're not going to let anyone marginalize you." Aaliyah nodded, her resolve strengthening. Claire's words meant something. She wasn't just part of the team because of her debating skills, she was there because she could bring something different to the table. The competition was just a week away. Every practice was more intense than the last, as they honed their arguments and worked on strategy. Aaliyah spent hours poring over case materials, refining her arguments, and anticipating the counterpoints from their opponents. As much as she loved the challenge, there were moments when the pressure felt suffocating. On the day of the competition, the team boarded a bus to the event venue, a grand, ivy-covered building that looked like something out of an old, prestigious film. As Aaliyah stepped off the bus and onto the manicured grounds, she couldn't help but feel the weight of what she was about to face. The competition was fierce. The debate hall was filled with students in suits and blazers, all of them with their heads buried in last-minute prep materials or rehearsing speeches. Aaliyah took a deep breath and felt the familiar knot of anxiety in her stomach. She had never been in an environment like this before, this was the big league. The first round of debates was about to begin, and Aaliyah could already sense the tension in the air. There were teams from top universities. Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Aaliyah knew that all eyes would be on her. But what scared her more than anything was the fact that one of the teams they were facing had the reigning national champion, Colin Whitaker. Colin was a name that had been whispered around the debate society for months. He was an incredibly skilled debater, a master of logic and persuasion. He was the one to beat, and everyone knew it. It didn't matter that he was a privileged white guy from an elite prep school, what mattered was that he had won national championships before, and everyone expected him to win again. Aaliyah could feel the weight of her teammates' expectations, and even her own doubts, bearing down on her. This wasn't just about winning, it was about proving that someone like her, someone who had always been underestimated, could rise to the occasion and stand toe-to-toe with the best. All right, team, Claire said, giving each member a brief nod as they gathered at the podium. We've trained for this. We know the issues, we know the arguments, and we know what they're going to throw at us. But remember, this is about more than just winning. It's about showing them who we are. Aaliyah nodded, her heart racing, as the moderator called the first round to begin. As she took the stage with her team, the atmosphere in the debate hall was electric. The audience was filled with students, professors, and alumni who were all eager to see the top debaters in action. Aaliyah stood at the podium, her hands gripping the edge to steady herself, and looked across the room. There, at the opposing team's podium, was Colin Whitaker. He was just as formidable as she had heard, calm, collected, and exuding confidence. The moment he spoke, the audience leaned in. His arguments were sharp, refined, and almost impossible to counter. But Aaliyah wasn't intimidated. She had faced giants before, and she had taken them down. Now was no different. The debate raged on, each team presenting their arguments, countering one another with precision. Colin's team was formidable, but Aaliyah found herself keeping pace. Every time they tried to undermine her perspective, she flipped their arguments back at them with an insight they hadn't anticipated. She spoke from experience, from a place that no one in the room could understand unless they had walked in her shoes. The final round came, and the stakes were higher than ever. The room was silent as Aaliyah stepped up to deliver her closing argument. Her voice was steady, but inside, she was anything but calm. She spoke passionately about the need for change, about the power dynamics that controlled the world of debate, and about how people like her, the underdogs, the ones who had always been left out, deserved a seat at the table. As she spoke, she could feel the tide shifting. There was a shift in the room, an understanding. She wasn't just speaking for herself anymore, she was speaking for everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored. When the debate ended, Aaliyah's heart was pounding, her hands shaking. She had given everything she had, and she knew that no matter the outcome, she had made an impact. She had shown the room that she wasn't just a token, she was a force to be reckoned with. As the judges deliberated, Aaliyah stood with her teammates, waiting. The tension was unbearable, but Aaliyah stood tall. She had proven something to herself today. She had proven that she belonged here, not just in the debate society, but in every space that had once felt out of reach. Finally, the announcement came. The winners of the first round, the judge said, his voice cutting through the silence, are the team from the Ivy League Debate Society. And a special mention goes to Aaliyah Johnson, for her exceptional performance in today's debate. Aaliyah's heart soared as the crowd erupted into applause. She had done it. She had faced her fears, and she had crushed them. Aaliyah's victory in the first round was only the beginning. As the team advanced to the next stages of the competition, the pressure intensified. The number of eyes on her grew as well, and with each round, the expectations piled on higher. She had proven herself in the first debate, but she knew that it wasn't enough. She had to keep pushing. She had to keep proving that she was more than just a one-hit wonder. The practice sessions grew longer, and Claire pushed the team harder. Each time Aaliyah stepped into the debate hall, her nerves fluttered in her stomach, but this time, they were different. They were no longer just nerves, they were the fire that kept her moving forward. She couldn't afford to falter. Not now. But it wasn't just the competition that weighed on her. There was something else gnawing at her, something she hadn't quite figured out. She had felt the shift in the room after her performance in the first round. The other teams were no longer dismissing her as the underdog, they were beginning to take her seriously. But with that recognition came an unsettling feeling. She could feel the eyes on her more intensely now, both the admiration and the judgment. It wasn't just from the other debaters, either. Aaliyah had noticed something in the eyes of her teammates, too. The way they looked at her, maybe with respect, but also with a certain wariness. She could sense the tension. Maybe it was the pressure of competition, but she couldn't shake the feeling that some of them were starting to see her as a threat. The day of the semi-finals arrived with a cold breeze sweeping through the campus. The debate hall was packed with an anxious energy, and Aaliyah could feel it all around her. Her teammates were scattered throughout the audience, each silently rooting for her, but there was a subtle difference in the air today. The atmosphere felt heavier, more charged. It was as though everyone was waiting for something. For her to falter. For her to fall. But Aaliyah wasn't going to let that happen. She stood at the front of the room, the microphone in front of her, her team behind her. They were facing their toughest challenge yet. The other team, Colin's team, had been dominating the competition, and it was clear that this would be their biggest battle. But Aaliyah wasn't intimidated. She was ready. When the debate started, the audience fell silent. Aaliyah's heart was beating loudly in her chest, but her mind was clear. This was what she had trained for. She was prepared. The first few arguments flew by in a blur. Aaliyah was quick to jump in, presenting her points with precision and clarity. Colin's team was strong, but Aaliyah had learned to anticipate their tactics, to counter their strategies before they even made their move. With each rebuttal, she felt her confidence grow. She was in control now, and she wasn't about to let go. Then, it happened. In the middle of the debate, Colin made a pointed remark. "It's easy to criticize systems when you've never had the privilege of being in a position to change them," he said, his voice smooth and condescending. "But what people like Aaliyah fail to realize is that sometimes, you need to work within the system to change it. It's not as simple as tearing everything down." Aaliyah's blood ran cold for a moment. It was as if the room held its breath. The remark was a low blow, an attack on her background, on her perspective. He was trying to undermine everything she had worked for. But she wasn't going to let him win. Not today. She steadied herself, took a deep breath, and addressed the room. "Colin," Aaliyah said, her voice clear and strong, "what you're failing to understand is that working within a broken system only perpetuates the inequality it was built on. People like me don't have the luxury of working within systems that were never designed for us. The system doesn't bend for people like me, it breaks us down." She could feel the weight of her words hanging in the air, the audience shifting in their seats, absorbing what she had just said. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was a declaration. The room was silent for a moment before the murmurs started. Aaliyah felt her pulse quicken, but she didn't waver. She wasn't just defending her point, she was speaking the truth that no one in that room had wanted to acknowledge. She was showing them that she wasn't just some debate opponent. She was someone with a message, a purpose. Colin opened his mouth to respond, but Aaliyah didn't give him the chance. She continued, her voice cutting through the tension. "Change isn't easy," she said, her eyes locked on the judge at the front of the room, "but it starts with challenging the norms, the ideas that keep certain people in power while others are kept down. It's not enough to just adapt to the system. You have to dismantle the systems that oppress in the first place." The room was buzzing now. She could feel the energy shifting. For the first time in the competition, she felt like the tide was truly turning in her favor. As the final arguments were made, Aaliyah's team closed strong. The judges deliberated for what felt like an eternity. Aaliyah stood at the side of the room, her heart racing. She had laid it all on the line. She had given everything she had in that debate, no more holding back. Finally, the judges returned. The winners of today's semi-final debate are, the team led by Aaliyah Johnson. Aaliyah's breath caught in her throat. The applause was deafening. She had done it. Her team had done it. They had made it to the final round. But more importantly, she had proven something to herself, and to everyone else in the room, that she wasn't just a contender. She was a force. As Aaliyah walked off the stage, Claire met her with a proud smile. "You did it, Aaliyah. You didn't just win this round. You changed the game." Aaliyah's heart swelled with pride, but she knew this wasn't over yet. The final round was coming, and it would be the ultimate test. But for now, she allowed herself a brief moment of triumph. Later that evening, as she sat alone in her room, Aaliyah reflected on the journey that had brought her here. It wasn't just about the debates or the accolades. It was about breaking barriers, shattering expectations, and standing tall in the face of adversity. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or silenced. And that made everything worth it. But tomorrow, the real challenge would begin. And Aaliyah was ready. The day of the final debate arrived with an electric sense of anticipation hanging in the air. The buzz on campus was palpable. Students crowded the debate hall, eager to witness the ultimate showdown. For Aaliyah, the nerves were there, just like in every other round, but they were different this time. This wasn't just a competition anymore. This was everything she had worked for, everything she had fought for, condensed into a single moment. Her team, though exhausted from the months of preparation, was focused and ready. They had made it to the final round, but it wasn't just about winning anymore, it was about proving something bigger than that. Aaliyah wasn't just representing herself anymore, she was representing every person who had ever been doubted or marginalized. She was fighting for the space she had earned, and for the space that other people like her would one day take. The room was packed when they entered, a sea of faces all directed at the stage, waiting for the battle to begin. Her opponents stood at the other end of the room, Colin Whitaker and his team. The reigning champions. The ones everyone had expected to win. They stood tall, exuding confidence, their perfectly pressed suits and calm demeanors masking the competitive fire burning behind their eyes. Colin flashed her a quick, almost dismissive smile. He had no idea what he was up against. Aaliyah could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This was it. She had made it to the final round, but the stakes were higher than ever. This was her moment, not just to win, but to show that people like her had a rightful place at the table. The moderator called for the start, and the room quieted instantly. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the final round of this year's National Debate Championship. We are honored to have such skilled teams competing today. The motion for today's debate. The role of privilege in shaping society's future. The teams will present their opening statements and then proceed to the rebuttal rounds. Let the debate begin. Aaliyah stepped to the podium, the microphone a little too close to her lips, but she adjusted it, steadying herself. She could feel the weight of the audience's eyes on her, their expectations, their curiosity. She was about to speak for the last time in this competition, and she was determined to make every word count. Her team's opening statement had been well prepared, but Aaliyah wasn't just going to recite the points, they weren't just words to her. This was her story. Her truth. The truth of every underrepresented voice that had ever been overlooked in the shadows of power. Her voice was calm, but firm as she began. Privilege isn't just an advantage, it's a framework that influences everything. The opportunities you receive, the doors that open, the hurdles that appear in your way, these are not random. They are dictated by a system that rewards those who fit a certain mold, while others are left out. Aaliyah paused for a moment, letting her words hang in the air. The tension in the room was thick, and she could see the slight shift in the audience's posture as they leaned in, paying closer attention. There's a misconception, she continued, her tone sharp, that privilege is something that only affects individuals. That it's just a matter of hard work or effort. But in reality, privilege shapes entire systems, systems that dictate what happens when people of color, people from different backgrounds, try to break in. We're told that it's our fault for not succeeding, but we're never given the same opportunities. She let the weight of her words sink in before moving into her next point. Aaliyah wasn't just talking about facts, she was talking about the reality of the struggle, something no amount of statistics could fully capture. Privilege isn't just about being born into wealth or status, she continued, it's about the invisible systems that hold people back while others move forward without a second thought. It's about the doors that are closed before we even get the chance to knock. And it's time we start acknowledging that if we want a society that's truly equitable. The room was silent. Aaliyah could hear the subtle hum of people processing her argument. She wasn't backing down. She wasn't here to be polite or diplomatic. This was her truth, and she wasn't going to sugarcoat it for anyone. Colin's team came next. They countered her argument with smooth rhetoric and practiced finesse. But as he spoke, Aaliyah felt the same sense of calm that she had felt in every other round. She had seen this before, the slick logic, the polished presentation, the dismissive nature of his arguments. But this time, she wasn't going to let it slide. When it was her turn to respond, she stepped up to the microphone and locked eyes with Colin. There was no more pretending. This was no longer just a debate about systems, this was about the real-world consequences of those systems. Privilege is not just an idea to be discussed in theory, Aaliyah began, her voice steady but forceful, it's something that people live. Every day. People like me. Her eyes swept across the room, meeting the eyes of the judges, the audience, and her teammates. We don't get the luxury of being indifferent to these systems, because they affect every part of our lives. The opportunities we get, the way we're treated, the expectations that are placed on us, none of that is a level playing field. She took a deep breath before continuing. When you talk about working within the system to change it, you're telling me to wait. To sit back and keep hoping that maybe, one day, the system will be kind enough to change for me. But waiting isn't an option anymore. Change isn't a luxury we can afford. She could see Colin's team trying to gather their composure. But the damage was done. Aaliyah had hit the core of their argument, showing that what they saw as an idealistic solution wasn't realistic for the people who suffered under these systems every day. The rebuttal rounds continued, but Aaliyah felt the momentum shift. She could feel her arguments resonating with the room, could see the faces of the judges reflect a growing understanding. She wasn't just making a case, she was making a movement. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the debate came to a close. The room was buzzing with excitement. It wasn't just about who had won, it was about what had been said. For the first time, a debate was no longer just an intellectual exercise, it was a conversation about the real challenges people faced in the world. As the judges went off to deliberate, Aaliyah stood with her team, each member quiet but proud. They had done more than compete. They had made a statement. The room went still when the judge returned to announce the winner. Aaliyah's heart pounded in her chest as she held her breath. The winner of the 2025 National Debate Championship, the judge said, pausing for effect, is the team led by Aaliyah Johnson. The room erupted into applause. Aaliyah felt a wave of disbelief and joy wash over her. She had done it. They had done it. Against all odds, against every expectation, they had taken first place. Her teammates swarmed around her, lifting her in a group hug. But even as the cheers filled the room, Aaliyah felt something even more profound. This victory wasn't just about the championship, it was about everything that had led her to this moment. She had proven herself. And in doing so, she had proven that everyone who had ever been overlooked, underestimated, or doubted could rise up and succeed. With a final glance at Colin, who had been silent throughout the closing ceremony, Aaliyah smiled. She knew that this victory was more than just a personal achievement, it was a statement to the world. And it was only the beginning. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?